do we know? Do you know who Lex is referring to? I have no idea. Lex is a super popular guy. Would it shock you if the Supreme Court used the argument I just gave as a reason for disagreeing with Colorado? I guess it'd be a pretty shitty argument. Yeah, I don't know. Kind of looking at the Ray Epps stuff too, and there's some weird stuff. A former Marine and his family was killed, and the SWAT team busted in the house and killed him despite having no previous charges. Ray Epps knew the guy and was even there after. Okay. You seen the unhinged shit that Mark Cuban is posting? No. Is there anything else we want to talk about with JP for topic suggestions? Also.
What's going on here?
Test, test. Okay. Talking about ADHD, I don't want to get into that. AIDS shit. Okay, I think we're good. Okay. Okay, I have a lot of stuff open that we're gonna read today. Do you have more respect for Jordan Peterson or Norm? I'm not familiar with any of Norman's earlier work, so I can't say. I have quite a bit of respect for Jordan Peterson's earlier stuff, prior to like the Canada C16 shit or whatever. Maybe Norm used to be like honest shit. I'm not sure. Well,
okay,
now thanks for giving
solid laps here to help us calculate a good race strategy.
We talk about some Palestinian national football 48? Nope, probably not today or tomorrow. 2 weeks, we can do it. Did you ever watch The Push? It's a reality TV show where they try to this person to get away with murder. Oh, Jesus. Let me use your account there a little bit. Oh, and I have to write my two things. What do you call it? Resolutions? Right, affirming resolutions for my. I don't know. Maybe I'll do that off screen. I'll do that off screen. Hold on.
Okay, in these kind of conditions, you're going to be driving into a lot of spray when there's a car ahead of you. Pirelli's full wet tyre can shift around 65 litres of water every second, and a lot of that's going to end up on your visor. With that in mind, make sure you give other cars plenty of room. There's no need to risk the car too much in this session, okay?
Artists for uploading the wrong video. What are you actually doing? You doing any more things on animals? I probably will. He uploaded the same video twice? Oh, base. That's just called milking the audience.
They told you about the new parts that have come in from the factory, right? Well, they're all fitted and good to go. I hope they do the trick.
Can you give a quick summary / overview of what you learned in Yemen? Clusterfuck. That's it.
light rain.
These things are the waves. Can you offer any insight, or have you done any research on why most people in entertainment, like actors, musicians, tend to lean left and market service, tend to be very uncreative and poor in those areas? You probably just end up being in certain environments and use all the people around those beliefs. All right, this article was written in 2023, November 3rd. Last year, so after October 7th. The use of human shields is looming large in the conflict between Israel and Hamas. President Biden has, on numerous occasions, charged Hamas with using civilians as human shields, as has European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. The practice also took center stage at a 24th of October UN Security Council meeting on the situation in Gaza. There, Secretary General Guterres explained bluntly that protecting civilians can never mean using them as human shields. Secretary of State Antony Blinken agreed Palestinian civilians must be protected, and Hamas must cease to use them as human shields. UK Minister of State for Security Tom Tugendhat was more direct, charging, "We know that Hamas are using innocent Palestinian civilians as human shields. They have embedded themselves in civilian communities. So too was Germany's foreign minister, who warned we must not be fooled by Hamas's playbook and stressed their use of women and children in Gaza as human shields. They're hiding weapons under supermarkets, apartment blocks, and even hospitals." Representatives of Belgium, Luxembourg, and Ukraine echoed such condemnation. Of course, the Israel Defense Force is also underscoring Hamas's use of the technique. For instance, concerning the Shifa Hospital, it accused the group of using the thousands of patients, doctors, and staff in the building to shield its underground headquarters. Similarly, it has highlighted Hamas operations in or near civilian objects. For example, in this round of fighting, the IDF has emphasized that residential neighborhoods are infested with rocket launchers, entrances to underground attack tunnels, Hamas operational command centers, weapons manufacturing and storage facilities. And rockets are launched at kindergartens, weapons are stored in mosques, explosives are smuggled in with humanitarian aid, and water pipes are potential rockets. And as to the strike on the senior Hamas commander and other fighters at Jabalia refugee camp that caused extensive incidental civilian loss of life and injury, the IDF explained that the targets were in an area where there are underground tunnels and operations in between civilian buildings. Sadly, the use of human shields is an all too common phenomenon of warfare. See here and here. What are this referencing? Human shields and international humanitarian law. Michael N. Schmidt. Is he referencing himself? Michael N. Oh, here. And another article by Ukraine Symposium: Weaponizing Civilians, Human Shields in Ukraine. Hamas and other organized armed groups in Gaza frequently engage in that practice. As noted in a 2019 report by NATO's Strategic Communications Center of Excellence, Hamas's use of human shields include firing rockets, artillery, and mortars from or in proximity to heavily populated civilian areas, often from or near facilities which should be protected according to the Geneva Convention, e.g. schools, hospitals, or mosques. Pages 24. Now we're doing this one. Locating military or security-related infrastructure, such as headquarters, bases, armories, access routes, lathes, or defensive positions within or in proximity to civilian areas. Protecting terrorists' houses and military facilities, or rescuing terrorists who are besieged or warned by the IDF, and combating the IDF from or in proximity to residential and commercial areas, including using civilians for intelligence gathering missions. Just like a whole new fucking thing. say use of human shields. Gaza Strip. Should we put money on Biden? Yeah, I think around $1,600 is the most that website lets me. Debate notes. There wasn't only how much did you bet on Biden? Not really odds. No, how much? I don't know. Whatever I have on.
Wait.
Hamas is again engaging in these activities and more, but under international law, the fact of operating in a manner that places the civilian population at risk was not standing alone, not the use of human shields. This post accordingly seeks to clarify the legal meaning of the notion, begins with a basic catalog of the law of armed conflict and international criminal law rules regarding human shields. The status of these rules is relatively uncontroversial, and the prohibition on using human shields plainly applies in Gaza. However, in application, they are often misunderstood and, do you want a basket with dinner? What is a basket? And, in some regards, controversial. Accordingly, I underscore their nuances in the remainder of this post, particularly those relevant in the war between Israel and Hamas. Let's do... Do you think being disingenuous or lying is worse? I mean, these are like synonyms for the same thing, right? Like, I don't know what the fuck. Okay, LA or LOAC treaty law. Provisions in numerous LOAC treaties ban the use of human shields with what, to hold all those cherries you're picking? Oh, Leica doesn't need a basket to pick cherries because he just has one. It's called Norman Finkelstein. LOAC treaty. This is law and armed conflict treaty law. Provisions in numerous LOAC treaties ban the use of human shields with respect to international armed conflict. Article 23 of the 1949 Geneva Convention 3 prohibits using prisoners of war to render certain points or areas immune from military operations. Article 23. When it says, this is the exact text from the Geneva Protocols, right? This isn't like summarized or something, is it? Hopefully. No prisoner of war may at any time be sent to or detained in an area. Prisoners of war. These are prisoners of war, right? We don't care about this. Okay. What's your reasoning for betting that Biden will win the next election? He already beat Trump once. The only thing that could possibly hurt Biden, I think, would be the economy. And I think that's largely, it's been turning around. I think it'll be largely turned around in time for election season. Trump has way too much baggage and crazy retarded shit. There's going to be too many mobilizing things. Like the, especially abortion. I think for Denmark independent voters, I don't think it's a good path to win it right now. But unless some other huge event happens, but who knows? We'll see. Yeah, but I think I'd be surprised right now if Trump won. Geneva Convention 4, Article 28, performs the same function for protected persons, a term that refers to those who, at a given moment and in any manner whatsoever, find themselves, in case of a conflict or occupation, in the hands of a party to the conflict or occupying power of which they are not nationals. Okay. Article 23, Article 28. What is the, this is Convention 3 and this is Convention 4. Oh, it's just like a similar, you know what, let's, Geneva Convention relevant articles. So for Geneva Convention 3, we have Article 23, Chapter 1. Okay, the chapters and all that doesn't matter. There's only one Article 23 to the Geneva Convention 3, right? It should be. Okay. Article 23, security of prisoners. Presenting the best solution involves Israel putting out all settlers from the West Bank and Palestine moving out all citizens in eastern Jerusalem. I don't think Palestinians would be happy with an agreement that involves them completely leaving East Jerusalem. And I don't think Israel is going to ever get rid of all the settlers in the West Bank. My guess is those are going to be non-starters on both sides. Geneva Convention 3, Article 23, Security of Prisoners. No prisoner of war may at any time be sent to or detained in areas where he may be exposed to the fire of the combat zone, nor may his presence be used to render certain points or areas immune from military operations. Prisoners of war shall have shelters against air bombardment and other hazards of war to the same extent as the local civilian population. With the exception of those engaged in the protection of their quarters against the aforesaid hazards, they may enter such shelters as soon as possible after the giving of the alarm. Any other protective measures taken in favor of the population shall also apply to them. Detaining powers shall give the powers concerned, through the intermediary of the protecting powers, all useful information regarding the geographical location of prisoner of war camps. Whenever military considerations permit, prisoner of war camps shall be indicated in the daytime by the letters PW or PG, placed so as to be clearly visible from the air. The powers concerned may, however, agree upon any other system of marking. Only prisoner of war camps shall be marked as such. All of these Geneva Conventions in 49? Geneva Convention, Convention 3, relative to August 12th. Convention 4, Article 28, Treatment 2, Danger Zones. The presence of a protected person may not be used to render certain points or areas immune to military operations. you think there's any real credence to the idea that another country would come in and take control of Gaza post-Hamas? Okay, all 4 Geneva Conventions were 1949. The additional protocols came later, though, right? I think. Don't care. Don't need this. All right. The 1977 Additional Protocol 1 to the 1949 Geneva Conventions likewise forbid the practice. Article 12 bans the use of medical units as shields. However, the most significant and well-known prohibition appears in Article 51(7), which extends to all civilians, not just those who qualify as protected persons.
Okay, this is the ERS management test. Hit the target time whilst managing your battery charge. The more efficiently you use energy throughout the lap, the higher the score.
Protocol.
Use your overtake
This is
button for
protocol
maximum power, but remember that it will drain your energy rapidly.
Protocol additional to the Geneva Conventions. Relating to the protection of Israel's not signed or ratified Protocol 1. Correct, neither is the U.S. Usually, it gets more complicated. Usually states will incorporate parts of these into their actual law, though. I don't know if they have to do this. Do you think the amount Israel has been gone? Do you think the amount of Israel bombing at the Gaza Strip is justified? Well, it seems like it so far. It's a hard call to make from the outside. 23. Was that cringe shit with Elmo yesterday? What is Elmo? Do you have a better solution for peace? Urk emailed me something really interesting yesterday, actually. It kind of makes me wonder. If Israel should actually release... There was another politician guy that I brought up who was locked up during the Second Intifada, but he's a really popular politician. I think behind Hamas in terms of like support, or he might be the leading individual politician in the region. He did like a little bit of terrorism, but not that much during the Second Intifada. But it might be that he would be somebody that could be negotiated with. Maybe it would be good for Israel to release him out of prison. Yeah, Barghouti or whatever. Lonerbox has talked about this a lot. Yeah. Would he be a Nelson Mandela type of guy? I think he'd be a Nelson Mandela type of guy. Ideally, that would be the goal. Or the hope, yeah. Okay. So Additional Protocol 1, Article 12, and Article 51(7). Okay, Article 12. Oh, it's a clusterfuck. The issue with that is that if Israel tried to make peace through an unpopular or unwanted leader, he would more than likely be seen as a Western puppet. That's why I'm saying releasing that guy from prison might be a good idea. Fuck. What do you think would be the best way in Obsidian to copy paste this? You know what? Fuck it, never mind. Publish more release content. Sure. I don't know what you're using right now. Okay. Copy this. Article 12 of the Additional Protocol 1 is medical units shall be respected and protected at all times and shall not be the object of attack. Paragraph 1 shall apply to civilian medical units provided that they A. belong to one of the parties to the conflict, B. are recognized and authorized by the competent authority of one of the parties to the conflict, or C. are authorized in conformity with Article 9, Paragraph 2 of this protocol or Article 27 of the First Convention. 3. The parties to the conflict are invited to notify each other of the location of their fixed medical units. The absence of such notification shall not exempt any of the parties from the obligation to comply with the provisions of Paragraph 1. And 4. Under no circumstances shall medical units be used in an attempt to shield military objectives from attack. Whenever possible, the parties to the conflict shall ensure that medical units are so sited that attacks against military objectives do not imperil their safety. And Article 51 is protection of the civilian population. This is still Additional Protocol 1, right? Correct. When are you going to promote the new DGG canvassing shirts? They're one from chat. We'll them later. One more call out to people wanting to sign up. Okay, Article 51, protection of the civilian population. The civilian population and individual civilians shall enjoy general protections against dangers arising from military operations. To give effect to this protection, the following rules, which are additional to other applicable rules of international law, shall be observed in all circumstances. The civilian population as such, as well as individual civilians, shall not be the object of attack. Acts or threats of violence, the primary purpose of which is to spread terror among the civilian population, are prohibited. Civilians shall enjoy the protection afforded by this section unless and for such time as they take a direct part in hostilities. And indiscriminate attacks are prohibited. Indiscriminate attacks are those which are not directed at a specific military objective, those which employ a method or means of combat which cannot be directed at a specific military objective, or those which employ a method or means of combat, the effects of which cannot be limited as required by this protocol, and consequently in each such case are of a nature to strike military objectives and civilians or civilian objects without distinction. Among others, the following types of attacks are to be considered as indiscriminate. Hamas aren't soldiers in uniform and they ignore the laws of war. Do war crimes even apply to them? We're getting to that in the article. I think he talks about that halfway through. An attack by bombardment by any methods or means which treats a single military objective, a number of clearly separated and distinct military objectives located in a city. An attack by bombardment by any methods or means which treats a single military objective, a number of clearly separated and distinct military objectives located in a city, town, village, or other area containing a similar concentration of civilians or civilian objects. An attack which may be expected to cause incidental loss of civilian life, injury to civilians, damage to civilian objects, or a combination thereof, which would be excessive in relation to the concrete and direct military advantage anticipated. And then attacks against the civilian population or civilians by way of reprisals are prohibited. The presence or movements of the civilian population or individual civilians shall not be used to render certain points or areas immune from military operations, in particular in attempts to shield military objectives from attacks or to shield, favor, or impede military operations. The parties to the conflict shall not direct the movement of the civilian population or individual civilians in order to attempt to shield military objectives from attacks or to shield military operations. Any violation of these prohibitions shall not release the parties to the conflict from their legal obligations with respect to the civilian population and civilians, including the obligation to take the precautionary measures provided for in Article 57. Fuck it, we might as well just fucking read it. Why the fuck not, dude? Let's do it. Article 57, precautions in... The conduct of military operations, constant care shall be taken to spare the civilian population, civilians, and civilian objects. With respect to attacks, the following precautions shall be taken. Those who plan or decide upon an attack shall do everything feasible to verify that the objectives to be attacked are neither civilian nor civilian objects, and are not subject to special protection but are military objectives within the meanings of paragraph 2 of Article 52, and that it is not prohibited by the provisions of this protocol to attack them. We should do Article 52 next. Take all feasible precautions in the choice of means and methods of attack with a view to avoiding, in any event, to minimizing incidental loss of civilian life, injury to civilians, and damage to civilian objects. Refrain from deciding to launch any attack which may be expected to cause incidental loss of civilian life, injury to civilians, damage to civilian objects, or a combination thereof, which would be excessive in relation to the concrete and direct military advantage anticipated. And then, let's see. With respect to attacks, following precautions shall be taken. An attack shall be canceled or suspended if it becomes apparent that the objective is not a military one, or is subject to special protection, or that the attack may be expected to cause incidental loss of civilian life, injury to civilians, damage to civilian objects, or a combination thereof, which would be excessive in relation to the concrete and direct military advantage anticipated, or effective advance warning shall be given of attacks which may affect the civilian population unless circumstances do not permit. When a choice is possible between several military objectives for obtaining a similar military advantage, the object to be selected shall be the attack on which may be expected to cause the least danger to civilian lives and to civilian objects. The conduct of military operations at sea or in the air, each party to the conflict shall, in conformity with its rights and duties under the rules of international law applicable in armed conflict, take all reasonable precautions to avoid losses of civilian life or damage to civilian objects. And no provisions of this article may be construed as authorizing any attacks against the civilian population, civilian or civilian objects. And then we reference Article 52. General protections of civilian objects. Testing, you're the best debater on the interwebs for the time being. At least you do not have to take the low road and flex your smarts to college students having an Ivy law degree. True. I dropped out of music school just so I could be the most humble debater. Absolutely right. I feel like that most of these statements only hurt the argument that the amount of Israeli bombing was justified. Okay, I don't know which ones are going to do that, but alright. Civilian objects shall not be the object of an attack or of reprisal. Civilian objects are all objects which are not military objectives as defined in paragraph 2. Attacks shall be limited strictly to military objectives. Insofar as objects are concerned, military objectives are limited to those objects which by their nature, location, purpose, or use make an effective contribution to military action and whose total or partial destruction, capture, or neutralization in the circumstances ruling at the time offer a definite military advantage. In case of doubt whether an object which is normally dedicated to civilian purposes, such as a place of worship, a house or other dwelling, or a school, is being used to make an effective contribution to military action, it shall be presumed not to be so used. Okay. All right. The 1977 addition of Protocol 1 to the 1949 Geneva Conventions likewise forbids the practice. Article 12 bans the use of medical units as shields. However, the most significant and well-known prohibition appears in Article 51, Section 7, which extends to all civilians, not just those who qualify as protected persons. And then the quote is, the presence or movement of the civilian population or individual civilians shall not be used to render certain points or areas immune from military operations, in particular in attempts to shield military objectives from attacks or to shield, favor, or impede military operations. The parties to the conflict shall not direct the movement of the civilian population or individual civilians in order to attempt to shield military objectives from attacks or to shield military operations. There is no comparable treaty provision for non-international armed conflict. However, Common Article 3 to the 1949 Geneva Conventions, which applies in such conflicts. What is Common Article 3? Conflicts not of an international character. Back to Convention 1 for the amelioration of the condition of the wounded and sick in our forces. Well, why is it called common? Why is it called a common article? Are there uncommon articles, or is it just because it's the first Geneva Convention that they call it Common Article? Convention 1. I believe the common articles are clauses all parties signed on to, but there are other clauses that only some agreed to. Okay, I don't know. I feel like, isn't everybody signed into all 4 articles of the Geneva Convention? Fuck. Let's see. Okay, Article 3. Conflicts not of an international character. In the case of an armed conflict not of an international character occurring in the territory
Okay,
from the
we're
high
reaching
contracting
danger
parties,
point with
each
the
party
well on
to the
entry
conflict
breach.
shall be
Okay,
bound to
danger
apply as a minimum
exacerbating
the following
issue,
provisions.
So keep temps under control, please.
Persons taking no active part in the hostilities, including members of armed forces who have laid down their arms in those placed forced in combat by sickness, wound, detention, or any other cause, shall in all circumstances be treated humanely without any adverse distinction founded on race, color, religion, or faith, sex, birth, or wealth, or any other similar criteria. To this end, the following acts are and shall remain prohibited at any time and in any place whatsoever with respect to the above-mentioned persons. Violence to life and person, in particular murder of all kinds, mutilation, cruel treatment, and torture, taking of hostages, outrages upon personal dignity, in particular humiliating and degrading treatment. I wonder, when you say, like, taking of hostages, wait, what is the distinction between a hostage? Your mic is super low. Wait, is it? My microphone? Test, test. 1, 2. Oh, it's a little low, not super low. I fixed it. Passing of sentences and the carrying out of executions without previous judgment pronounced by a regularly constituted court according all the judicial guarantees which are recognized as indispensable by civilized peoples. Hostages are against a person's consent. What's a prisoner of war? Oh, you consent to be taken hostage, or you consent to be captured because you don't want to be treated as a military person, huh? Let's see. The wounded and sick shall be collected and cared for. An impartial humanitarian body, such as the International Committee of the Red Cross, may offer its services to the parties of the conflict. Parties to the conflict should further endeavor to bring into force, by means of special agreements, all or part of the other provisions of the present convention. The application of the preceding provisions shall not affect the legal status of the parties to the conflict. Okay. However, Common Article 3 to the 1949 Geneva Conventions, which applies in such conflicts, provides persons taking no active part in the hostilities, including members of armed forces, who have laid down their arms, and those placed hors de combat by sickness, wounds, detention, or any other cause, shall in all circumstances be treated humanely. Subjecting individuals to use as human shields is, in my opinion, encompassed in the notion of inhumane treatment. Okay. Similarly, Article 13 of Additional Protocol 2 to the 1949 Geneva Conventions, applicable in certain non-international armed conflicts for parties to the instrument, similarly provides that the civilian population and individual civilians shall enjoy general protection against the dangers arising from military operations. Using human shields would subject them to such dangers and therefore be forbidden by the instrument. Okay. Article 13. So we've got, this is Protocol 2.
DRS is being enabled this lap. Use DRS when you're within 1 second of the car ahead and in the DRS zone.
Is there a quick way to, like, minimize all? Oh, I can't. How will I minimize this? Oh, wait. No. Someone said this earlier, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer already. Why not take an online non-degree-seeking course in these topics? I've thought about it, actually. It might be interesting. Is there like a Khan Academy on international law? Okay, this is Protocol 1, Protocol 2. Article 13. Protection of the civilian population. The civilian population and individual civilians shall enjoy general protection against the dangers arising from military operations. To give effect to this protection, the following rules shall be observed in all circumstances. The civilian population as such, as well as individual civilians, shall not be the object of attacks, acts, or threats of violence, the primary purpose of which is to spread terror among the civilian population are prohibited. Civilians shall enjoy the protection afforded by this part, unless and for such time as they take a direct part in hostilities. Okay. As to the application of these provisions, Israel is not a party to Additional Protocol 1 or 2. They do not apply in the conflict. Further, there is uncertainty as to the classification of the conflict, although I find it to be non-international. Wow, Wicked Emerge, thanks for your voice, everybody. Although I find it to be non-international, reasonable colleagues in this field style it as an international armed conflict. This complicates direct application of the Geneva Convention's provisions. Okay. If you break Geneva Convention protocol, who punishes you? Is all of this part of the ICC, the International Criminal Court, or what is this all like incorporated under? Like which body? Thoughts on rural French blocking traffic all across France? They park their tractors all across the country. It's against the law to block traffic. 80 people have died because of ambulances. I don't know. Convention protocol will include the grave breaches must be punished. However, they do not themselves set out specific penalties, nor they create a tribunal to try offenders. Oh, that's cringe. Okay, these are just Geneva Convention things that we're just kind of used to. Oh my god, this is so fucking cringe. So I'm guessing that so when people talk about committing war crimes as defined in the International Criminal Law, or from the International Criminal Court, I'm guessing that the ICC probably has provisions and statutes that incorporate everything from the Geneva Conventions, or ICC rules. Can I find, like, not International Criminal Court, International Criminal Court, rules, laws?
We're approaching
I think
the
I've already
pit
got this
window.
open
You're
somewhere
going
else.
to be on mediums.
Maybe? Oh, no, maybe I just did it first. Establishment of the court. The International Criminal Court is hereby established. It shall be a permanent institution which shall have the power to exercise jurisdiction or jurisdiction over persons with a serious crimes of international concern referred to the statute. Okay, so I'm guessing that oh, but we kind of learned about this. Because for international law, the ICC, under war crimes, so in the ICC Article 8, all of this is essentially incorporating what's in the first four Geneva Conventions. For war, under war crimes. Oh, grave breaches of the Geneva Conventions of the 12th of August 1939 and any of the following acts against persons or property protected under the provisions of the relevant Geneva Convention. Okay, so this is where our Geneva Conventions kind of get powered. So we have the Geneva Conventions, which are unenforceable. There's no like body that enforces or levies punishments, but the ICC, International Criminal Court, under Article 8, incorporates the first 4 sections of the Geneva Conventions under this here. Most of it, I would imagine, shows up there. Okay. They just moved the location of your appearance at Yale to a bigger hall with more occupancy. Let's see. Law of armed conflict, customary law. Despite such obstacles, it is irrefutable that the prohibition on using civilians and other protected persons as human shields applies in the conflict between Israel and Hamas. This is because the ban reflects customary international law in both international and non-international armed conflict. The International Committee of the Red Cross came to this conclusion, with which I agree in Rule 97 of its customary international humanitarian law study. Jesus Christ. Volume 2, Chapter 32, Section J. What does this refer to? Practice. Is this like the actual, is there like a book? Or... Volume 2, Chapter 32, Section J. Part 1. Do you have to read this to be like a country? Everybody has to read all the rules for my Volume 2, Chapter 32, Section J. Chapter 32, Fundamental Guarantees, Section J. Human Shields, on page 2285. Human shields. Treaties and other instruments. Article 19, second paragraph, GC 1, provides that Article 19, second paragraph of the First Geneva Convention provides that the responsible authority shall ensure that fixed establishments and mobile medical units are, as far as possible, situated in such a manner that Texas military objectives cannot imperil their safety. Article 23, second paragraph, Geneva Convention 3, provides that no prisoner of war may at any time be sent to or detained in areas where he may be exposed to the fire of the combat zone, nor may his presence be used to render certain points or areas immune from military operations. Article 28, Geneva Convention 4, provides that the presence of a protected person may not be used to render certain points or areas immune from military operations. And Article 12, Section 4 of Additional Protocol 1 provides that under no circumstances shall medical units be used in an attempt to shield military objectives from attack. Whenever possible, the parties to the conflict shall ensure that medical units are so sited that attacks against military objectives may imperil their safety. Additional Protocol 1 was adopted by consensus. Provides the presence and movements of the human population. We've already read this. We've got this in our thing. adopted by 77 votes in favor, 1 against, and 16 absentations. Pursuant to Article 8, how would you read this? How would you actually read this? Article 8, subsection 2, subsection B, subsection 23. Is there like an actual way to say this in like common parlance? Like a way that doesn't sound like... Are your opponents expected to do all this reading? Well, I mean, it's good to know. I don't care if they read it or not. You stop saying subsection? Oh, so like Article 8, subsection 2, subsection B, subsection 23, like that. What debate is this prep for? Well, I just have a bunch of random shit on it. This is just random stuff on like international law. Just trying to be more like familiar and fluid, rather than just like learning concepts. I feel like if we read through articles and we read more, it just gets it, just instantiates it in our mind better. Yeah. Oh, or subsection 2B23. That's what you would say. Utilizing the presence of a civilian or other affected person to arrest for certain points, areas, and military force, significantly out of constituted war crime and international armed conflicts. Other instruments provides the parties conflict to prohibit from placing or treating the civilian population subject to their authority, entering their military objectives with the idea of inducing the enemy to refrain from attacking those objectives. Paragraph 6 of the 1991 Memorandum of Understanding on the application of IHL between Croatia and the SFRY requires ourselves to be conducted in accordance with Article 51, subsection 7. Additional Protocol 1, the 2000 UNTAET Regulation number 2015 establishes panels of exclusive jurisdiction over serious criminal offenses, including war crimes, according to Section 6, subsection 1B23, utilizing the presence of a civilian or other protected person at certain points. Okay, so international humanitarian law databases. So this book, I'm guessing, this book is just a big old collection of a compilation of different international law things and then international law cases, I'm guessing, is essentially what this is. Rule 97. What are the list of rules? Where did these come from? Back to list of rules. Do these show up in the big old book here? Control F. Rules. Holy shit. Practicing Rule 62, Rule 56. What does that mean now? What is this? What am I reading here? The rules. The international humanitarian law rules? What is it? There are 161 rules of customary international humanitarian law identified in the ICRC Study on Customary IHL, originally published by Cambridge University Press in 2005. Huh. So these are just, it's customary international law, meaning these are kind of things that basically everybody agrees on, basically, right? Treaties, customary law, and general principle. Customary law. A group of people across time engage in a practice that is not codified into law, essentially common law. They do this because they subjectively believe that it's compulsory. This is kind of the definition you gave me, but can you give me a shout out? Hey, Lane Brain, shout out. You don't get one, Max. Loser. I have this set as use of human shields. And then I've got international law. I think I should make a separate article on international law. We should do a real one. Okay. So I'm gonna move these nodes down here. And then we're gonna move this up to here. That's what we're gonna do. Can I make a folder with the same name as a note? New folder. International law. Oh, we can. Thank you. Boom. Boom. You're gonna collab with Pokey and Lily. No. Okay. International law. Control V. Geneva Convention. We're just gonna call this to the Geneva Convention. Why hasn't Hamas been charged by the ICC for hostages and war crimes like human shields? We'll learn more about this today. I don't think the ICC... No, the ICC can charge people that don't submit itself to its jurisdiction, can't they? Because the ICC charged Comey. Coney? Who is Coney 2012? Comey 2012? I think Coney 2012. It's not a country. The ICC does not charge countries. The ICC charges individuals. The ICJ charges countries. The International Court of Justice, which is a UN thing. The ICC, which I believe is its own thing, and Hague, the ICC charges individuals, I believe. I think for the ICJ to have jurisdiction on something, both countries have to submit themselves to the ICJ's authority, I think. I don't think for the ICC, I don't think the ICC requires, I think everybody's like, I think it can automatically do its own research. I think. Okay, Geneva Convention. Boom, boom, okay. So we've got Convention 2. We can make this. Oh god, that's so ugly. We fucked it all up. What is the code forward? Control Z, Control Y. Okay.
Okay, so the carbohydrates just come in. They're now on the soft tyre. Soft tyres and the
We're gonna
carbohydrates.
take everything back by one. Are there any types of topics that you don't feel Wikipedia is a reliable source of information on? I think Wikipedia is a really good starting point for almost anything. But it's only giving you like a bare bones understanding, and fleshing out stuff more can either give you more information that you wouldn't have had, it can either give you context that makes you feel differently about what you've read, or in some cases the additional context could make you feel the opposite about what you've read, which we've come into a few times. I think Wikipedia is a really good starting place. Personally, and I say this as somebody who's not qualified to say it, so take everything I say with a grain of salt, I think Wikipedia is probably a better starting place than a lot of secondary sources. Yeah, it's not the be-all and end-all. Convention 1, Convention 3. Wait, we did Convention 4. We never bring up Trump's pardoning his own family. Yeah, I don't know. That's weird. all the people he pardoned is kind of weird. Oh, and then we have an additional protocol here. Why is this in French? Protocol additional. Let's go to additional protocol. I plan on watching Hassan's reaction. I don't have time. My time this month is gonna be. Did you ever for talking to with a presidential historian who has a record of predicting all the elections starting at Reagan? How many presidents have there been since Reagan?
Norris has just put in the fastest
Like
lap of the
7?
race so
Or how many presidents since Reagan? 11? You've got Bush, Clinton, Bush Jr., Obama, Trump, Biden. 11 terms since Reagan. Oh, because technically they're all different elections. That's true. So 11 terms since Reagan. I don't think that's very impressive. Oh, okay, alright. What the fuck is this? Okay. Boom, boom. Okay.
that's just 5 laps of fuel remaining.
Joe, where are you, motherfucker? What can you tell me what this is? What are these like? What are these rules? What are these the rules of? Is this just like a customary list of rules compiled by international humanitarian law? Is this like from the international something of the Red Cross? ICRC rules are drawn from stuff like military manuals and court cases around the world to figure out what most countries follow. If you look at ruling, some of the examples. Yeah, sure, but I'm just asking like, I'm asking like what it means, I guess, or like what is this? Like, could I write like the DGG humanitarian law database and write my own 120 rules and then do this, and it would just be like, oh, this is like the DGG. It's just a set of standards. Can you be more specific? I guess I can't.
The turbochargers on its last
Okay,
legs.
so
Let's try to
we've
keep
got the
mileage
Geneva
on it to a
Convention.
minimum.
And then we have the International Humanitarian Law Database? Is that what we call it? Like when this says customary international humanitarian law, is the ICRC the only people that can talk about customary international humanitarian law? Or by the ICRC? What is this? International what of the Red Cross? International community? International commitment? International cock the robbers? You ever use Bing AI chat for quick info? No, I just don't trust it. This. Compilation of all the things that make up international humanitarian law. Yeah, but it's not like a body. Nobody ratifies it. It's just like a book basically that just says like here's all the things that we think kind of make up like international humanitarian law.
Okay, we've got 4 laps of fuel remaining.
Okay, so Rule 97. international law student here. Customary international law is law, so it is not codified anywhere. It's just like the rules. Countries hold it because they feel they're obligated to think of it like English common law. Okay, interesting. Is Ilrian Warrior just like spamming fucking shit in chat? Why do we care about this? I'm quoting the Jewish religious book. Is there a different Numbers, Deuteronomy, Numbers, Psalms? Wait, is there a difference between the Old Testament and the not the Quran, the Torah or whatever? Because technically anything you quote in the Torah is going to apply to technically Christians as well, right? Like, there are major differences. Okay, Rule 97. The Torah is the first 5 books of the Old Testament. Yeah, but I'm curious if there are like any changes or whatever. Like, do they actually like meaningfully change any of the text, or is it literally like a word for word copy paste? Or okay, practice. Do I need to include this? Actually, yeah, you know what, we will. State practice establishes this rule as a norm of customary international law applicable in both international and non-international armed conflicts. Oh, so you know what? Yesterday, I asked that question of, like, are there any court cases of people doing a certain thing? And I'm guessing that if I actually go and I read the actual customary international military law book, it's possible that if I go to Chapter 32, Section J, maybe I can find some relevant court cases that they'll list in here, maybe, as like a source of law. Chapter 32, Section J. 2285. I can't go to the page number? Seriously? One in ICC and one in ICTY? Oh, I don't remember that. Link me in the Discords. 2285.
Okay, mate, final lap of the race. Final lap. Gap to your teammate behind is 23.2 seconds. Green flag.
Okay, human shields. ICC case of 2006. Okay. And then 1995 and then 2004. Do people just not get charged? How often do people even get charged with war crimes? Is this like, I feel like this would be some shit that's happening like all the time. Is it like incredibly rare? Oh my god, these cases. What the fuck? How many pages is this? Oh, each one of these is, what is this, 600 pages? 535? Holy Christ.
Okay, we've lost a position. That's us down a place.
Okay, so treaties and other instruments. Oh, okay. Oh, never mind. Hold on. I thought this was a convoluted cluster. This document makes a lot of sense, I think, now. I think I understand this. So, okay, this is a book compiling all sorts of shit on customary international law. So if I go down to a particular chapter and subsection, so on human shields, the first part of that is going to give me all the treaties and other instruments that talk about human shields. So first are going to be the actual treaties, then it'll give me other instruments, So memorandums, regulations. Then I'm going to get a section on national practices. So we'll get military manuals that refer to human shields. Okay, this makes sense. Then we've got legislation that refers to human shields. Then there's going to be case law. Okay, and these will be related to cases in a nation where they themselves are policing human shields. So the UK military court did it, and then German Hagmann trial, the U.S. military tribunal at Nuremberg. That kind of a national case? National, right? And then other national practices. Such things.
Ah, fantastic drive. That's just fantastic. Amazing. You deserve that race win. Well done, mate.
I see. Okay. So basically, and then practice of international organizations and conferences. So this is just going to be like a summation or compilation of like all the different things, depending on what chapter you're reading, relating to a particular international law topic you got a question
this
on.
result
Okay.
affects the Drivers' Championship. Chambers takes over the lead of the Drivers' Championship.
International
So, Anthony
organizations.
Davidson,
Gotcha.
who would you
International
rank as your driver of the
conferences.
day?
I have to give it to Chambers.
It's time to...
No other practice was found. And the next section was on enforced disappearance. Gotcha. Okay. Alright, I understand this better. Okay, International Humanitarian Law Database. And then here we've got customary English. This is customary international humanitarian law. Okay, there we go. Jesus. All right. We should link customary international humanitarian. Full publication? What would we call this? Full book? I don't really need to link to this site. I should just link to the book with this link here, I think. Okay. All right. Practice, Volume 2, Chapter 32, Section J. Summary. All right. We've already read this, but we're going to read it again. State practice establishes this rule as a norm of customary international law applicable in both international and non-international armed conflicts. Okay. And then international and non-international armed conflicts. Oh, boom. Look up Project 2025. I watched a bit about it in preparation for my Bench Growth stuff, and it seems unhinged, but I don't know how like serious that shit is. Jesus. Oh, some of this is fucking AIDS. Why? In the context of international armed conflicts, this rule is set forth in the Third Geneva Convention with respect to prisoners of war, the Fourth Geneva Convention with respect to protected civilians, and Additional Protocol 1 with respect to civilians in general. Wait, Joe, where are you? Can you just sit in my room? What else are you doing with your life besides giving me information? fuck is this? There, okay. What I really mean is I have a question for you. Heard you need a custom database, feel free to reach out. Oh my god. Put on fake tan right now? Why? Be a pale vampire queen. In the context of international armed conflicts, this rule is set forth in the third Geneva. Okay. Under the statute of the International Criminal Court, utilizing the presence of a civilian or other protected person to render certain points, areas, or military forces immune from military operations constitutes a war crime in international armed conflicts. Here's my question. Let's say that, okay, so here's something I've said before, or something that is said that I've repeated. Israel hasn't ratified Protocol 1 or Protocol 2 of the Geneva Convention, additional Protocol 1 or additional Protocol 2 of the Geneva Convention. If additional Protocol 1 and 2 of the Geneva Convention, however, were incorporated under the ICC's rules, it wouldn't really matter if you've ratified them or not, as long as the ICC has jurisdiction, right? Like, theoretically, even if you didn't ratify any of the Geneva Convention, if the ICC has jurisdiction on something, you're going to be charged in accordance with their rules, because the ICC largely incorporates everything as war crimes under the Geneva Conventions, right? Or am I missing something there? Or could you be exempt from that part of the ICC ruling if you say, well, I didn't ratify those protocols? Does that make sense? Oh, hello. Invader Veto. The UN Security Council has power to refer cases to the ICC even if countries are non-signatories, placing them under jurisdiction law. Destiny of a business proposition for you. You'll get equity in the company for a couple hours, resulting in per week. The upsides are infinite. All I need is your credit card number, expiration, the 3 little numbers in the back. Good one. Oh, are we in 60s workout mode today? Not all parts of the additional programs are customary law. Sure, that's not what I'm saying. Nice, well, actually, dipshit. Is Destiny posting a response to Omar Badar? I might make like a video in response to it. But he's responding to like 3 claims I made out of like an hour-long video. But I might respond to it. I ordered that Ben and Me book so I can just read the whole fucking thing so that I never have people try to throw this stupid shit at me again. In the context of international armed conflicts, this rule is set forth in the Third Geneva Convention with respect to prisoners of war. Fourth Geneva Convention, I'll get rid of this. And additional Protocol 1, under the statute of the International Criminal Court, utilizing the presence of a civilian or other protected person to render certain points, areas, or military forces immune from military operations constitutes a war crime in international armed conflicts. Under the statute of the International Criminal Court. Okay. When we say war crime, we're exclusively talking about the ICC or the ICC and the ICJ, I think, right? Both? Or just one?
We're in a position now where we're able to attract a new sponsor to the team. Head on over to the corporate tab and select the sponsor screen to choose who we should approach.
Oh, I love cleaning up copy pastes. Okay. Uh-oh. Okay. The prohibition of using human shields is contained in numerous military manuals, many of which extend the prohibition to all civilians. Using humanitarian shields constitutes a criminal offense under the legislation of many states. This practice includes that of states not, or at the time, party to Additional Protocol 1, or to the statute of the International... Oh, okay, hold on. The prohibition... Okay, let me read this again. I need to... The prohibition of using human shields is contained in numerous military manuals, many of which extend the prohibition to all civilians. Using human shields constitutes a criminal offense under the legislation of many states. This practice includes that of states not, or not at the time, party to Additional Protocol 1 or to the statute of the International Criminal Court. In 1990 and 1981, there was extensive condemnation by states of the use of prisoners of war, and civilians by Iraq as human shields, and the United States declared that such use amounted to a war crime. What does that mean if the U.S. declares it, though? That's just like our opinion? Statements of El Salvador, Germany, Italy, Kuwait, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so we just like say it. Like, fuck you. Okay. What do you think about the Fed announcing they're holding interest rates as steady? Probably okay to keep inflation down, I think.
Okay, give us some
Year-over-year
good,
inflation,
consistent
or not
laps,
year-over-year,
please. We're
cumulative
looking for
inflation is still
good
pretty
data
high.
that we can work into a race strategy.
But if they don't see negative effects in the economy, I imagine they probably hold it up for a little bit. That'd be my guess. Use of prisoners of war as human shields during the Second World War was the subject of war crimes trials by the UK military court at Lüneburg in the student case in 1946, and by the U.S. military tribunal at Nuremberg in the von Lieb high command trial case in 1948. In the Karadzic and Mladic cases in 1995, before the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, the accused were charged with war crimes for using UN peacekeepers as human shields. In its review of the indictments, the tribunal upheld this charge. Okay, now I understand too. So this here at the bottom is just kind of a summary of what you would find if you actually read the whole book. They're just kind of like giving you a summary basically of what you would find. Okay. You pronounced it the worst way possible? Good. Suck muddy. With respect to non-international armed conflicts, Additional Protocol 2 does not explicitly mention the use of human shields, but such practice would be prohibited by the requirement that the civilian population and individual civilians shall enjoy general protection against the dangers arising from military operations. It is significant, furthermore, that the use of human shields is often been equated with the taking of hostages, which is prohibited by Additional Protocol 2 and by customary international law, see Rule 96. Is that where we're at, or we're in Rule 97? Oh, okay. In addition, deliberately using civilians to shield military operations is contrary to the principle of distinction and violates the obligation to take feasible precautions to separate civilians and military objectives. Several military manuals, which apply in non-international armed conflict, prohibit the use of human shields. Just putting all of this here. Fuck. Legislation of several states criminalizes the use of human shields in non-international armed conflicts. The use of human shields in non-international armed conflicts has been condemned by states and by the United Nations. For example, with respect to the conflicts in Liberia, Rwanda, Sierra Leone, Somalia, Tajikistan, and former Yugoslavia. No official contrary practice was found. The ICRC has reminded parties to both international and non-international armed conflicts the prohibition of using human shields. International human rights law does not prohibit the use of human shields as such, but this practice would constitute, among other things, a violation of the non-derogable right not to be arbitrarily deprived of the right to life. See commentary to Rule 89. The UN Human Rights Committee and regional human rights bodies indicated that this right involves not only the right to not be killed, but also the duty of the state to take measures for life. In Demari v. Turkey, in which the applicant submitted that her husband had been used as a human shield, the European Court of Human Rights stated that Article 2 may imply, in certain well-defined circumstances, a positive obligation on the authorities to take preventative operational measures to prevent an individual for which they are responsible. Hi.
Am I allowed to talk to you about the thing I just messaged you about?
Yeah, sure, a little bit. What's up?
Okay, who set it up?
They just reached out to me. I think it's just they saw another conversation.
He personally did?
Or he's keen
you've announced it publicly, so I can say who I'm talking about, right? I don't have to vague post,
Well,
or do you want me to vague post
let's
it?
vague post. I mean, they know what you're talking about, but yeah. What about it?
Oh my god, I'm so excited. This is almost as exciting as getting Jonathan Haidt on the show. Holy fuck. Okay,
It's
are
gonna
you
be-
gonna go back? Yeah. Are you gonna go back and look at his like 2016 to 2020 content?
No, I think our conversation is gonna be. It's just like conversational. It's not gonna be like a hardcore debate or anything.
No, of course not. But I don't think he does hardcore debates anymore. And everything. I'm just very excited. Do you know what you're talking about then?
They said they prefer just like free-flowing conversations, and then they asked me for topic suggestions. These are like the things that I have. I sent them to you, and I imagine our conversations will probably revolve around these things. If you have anything else that you think I should add, you can let me know.
Okay, interesting. It's more like social. I'm guessing you don't want me to read these in any way out loud.
I did these on stream this morning, so like I
Oh,
asked my
okay.
audience if they had any
Really?
suggestions for things. Yeah.
Not fundamentally truth-seeking machines. So are these his positions, and you're going to disagree? Like the humans are not fundamentally truth-seeking machines, but pleasure machines. Do you agree or disagree? Is that your statement or his?
That's my statement. I imagine there's probably like an amount of agreement and disagreement on these. I'm just like having a conversation to see. It's just like I said, it's just a conversation. I don't know. I don't even know which of these we agree or disagree on. We might agree on literally all of these, and I'm just curious what he thinks about it.
Do you think you mostly disagree with him on politics then? Because there's like, ever since 2020, especially, his foreign politics are really bad, in my view.
Yeah, but I don't know if I don't think I want to have like a
Ukraine debate.
I don't know if I want to have a political debate with him. I just don't know if that'd be like a good use of time. I don't even know like factually like where he stands on any of it, and I feel like it's all going to be philosophy anyway. It's going to be like, oh well, the West philosophically shouldn't be helping other countries or some shit like that.
Do you think you're going to be Peterson pilled? Are you Shapiro pilled at all? Like, do you feel like you have more respect or less respect with Shapiro after talking to him? Or do you feel like he grifted a little bit when talking to you? Obviously, you can choose how you respond to that.
I feel like he
PR from
is exactly where I kind of expect him to be and still is. I think he's a pretty smart guy, but I think he definitely has a lot of audience capture. Like there are certain opinions that he just has to have for his audience. That's how I feel. But
I'd be so curious to see if you think, if Jordan Peterson would agree that he's had audience capture at all. That's like one thing I'm super curious about, because I feel like there's this, and this might be my personal interest, so if you're not interested, obviously don't bring up anything unless you're interested. But when I look at like Peterson's work, like 2016 to 2020, there's some like consistently cringe shit that he does to this day, but there's some stuff that he does now that he will like never, in fact, he advocated like explicitly against doing before like his brain injury and stuff.
yeah, I
And
understand
I'm
what
so
you're saying.
curious.
I feel like that's going to
Yeah.
come up as part of the second question I have. I think we'll probably get into that. That like it feels like people
Okay.
basically need to have constellations of belief. It's hard to stake out unique political positions that your particular social group doesn't believe in, and that people can kind of get like bullied or pushed in certain directions based on their social group. I think that'll be a part of that conversation.
Do you think you'll ask him specifically if he thinks he has, like, will you have like that dynamic conversation about himself?
I have no idea. I don't know. I just don't know I don't know. He might be like in a super chill mood. He might be in an argumentative mood. If he wants to fight, we'll fight. If he wants to be chill, then I'll probably go to match energy. I'm not going to go there to like beat him over the head with anything. Yeah, it'll just depend on. Yeah, it'll super depend on the conversation. Yeah.
That's fair. I'm just wondering if you would ask him about himself. Like,
If it
do you
feels like
think
I
you've
want
done
to, yeah,
this?
but if it feels like he's like pivoting away from like personal questions, or he wants to have more of a general conversation, but if he wants to like make it more personal, be involved, then yeah, I would definitely ask him personally. I think those are like those questions are things I have kind of towards the end here. How do you think you contribute to the world? Do you think it's been positive or negative? How do you think we should like be pushing people forward or whatever? Like it would come up kind of as part of that. But I don't know how personal he wants to be versus not personal, and I don't want to be like I don't want to be like on the attack.
Yeah, no, for sure. I don't mean like lambasting like interpersonally and stuff, obviously.
Sure. Well, but I mean, those questions commit me to that, right? Like if I ask something like, do you think you've suffered audience capture? And it's like, well, no, of course not. I think all of my opinions are exactly reasonable, and I've logic my way to everything, and nothing has changed at all. And I don't follow that up
You
with
disagree.
yeah, I would
Yeah.
have to follow that up, and then it would be, yeah. I think that there are certain questions that obligate me to a line of questioning that is going to get really personal really quickly. So, yeah. But like I said, it'll depend on that.
Interesting. I'm so curious how it's going to go. This is the conversation you've said you've most wanted to have, right?
I think it'll be like probably one of the more interesting ones, just because he's just an interesting guy that I think is decently smart. But I don't know if it's going to be like my audience is going to like it the most. Like I think like a Joe Rogan debate would probably be more cool, or like any like big Trump official or whatever, that would be more cool.
Sure, like it'd be more content-y and stuff.
Yeah.
I just, as you know, I'm not exactly super aggressively content-brained, so. Okay, interesting. Oh my god, I'm so excited. Somebody sent it to me and they're like, I'm pretty sure it's a meme. So I had to check.
Who knows? Maybe the Hassan Manifesto might drop on the 3rd, you know?
Yeah, the long-awaited Hassan Manifesto. Huh, okay, so no more thoughts on it?
Nope. See how it goes, I'll let you know.
Okay, I'm excited.
Fun. You're going to read the 2002 document from the Israel Ministry of Foreign Affairs about the ICC and how they view it applies to them? Maybe. Maybe we'll get to that today, whatever I'm reading through. Oh, I have been. I got a bunch of people that emailed me, a bunch of my Zionist brothers from the Mossad that emailed me about. I think I've been technically incorrect in policy, although maybe correct in practice sometimes. So the prior policy that Israel had of using human shields. So one of the things I said is like I think in the very early stages of the military, Israel did commandeer civilians to like check out houses for bombs and shit. That was something that I'd said because I'd read that a lot. So apparently what the IDF did was they had a policy. This was their policy. Apparently the IDF had a policy to where if they were going to enter a house where they thought either Hamas was or somebody they wanted to arrest, sometimes what they would do is rather than knocking on the door and starting an armed conflict there, they would ask a nearby civilian, like, hey, do you want to go knock on this door to see who's home, and then tell them that we're outside so that they don't start shooting as soon as they see somebody at the door. I think it might have been called the friendly neighbor policy or something. Now, apparently, in practice, there were, I'm pretty sure at least one time where a citizen was kind of like compelled to do this or felt like he had to or else they were going to kill him. So it might have endangered some civilian lives, and then I think eventually their court just ruled to stop this practice because it was too much on the edge or on the border or whatever. But that was apparently that was the practice that people refer to a lot when they say Israel had a policy of human shields, yeah. Were they Israeli citizens that were able to do it? No, it was people, Palestinians in the area. Non-derogable, okay. Oh, individuals who are responsible, okay. Definitions of human shields. The prohibition of using human shields in the Geneva Convention, Additional Protocol 1, and the Statute of the International Criminal Court are couched in terms of using the presence or movements of civilians or other protected persons to enter certain points or areas, or military forces immune from military operations. Most examples given in military manuals, which have been the object of condemnations, have been cases where persons were actually taken to military objectives in order to shield those objectives from attacks. The military manuals of New Zealand and the United Kingdom give as example the placing of persons in or next to ammunition trains. There were many condemnations of the threat by Iraq to round up and place prisoners of war in civilian strategic sites and around military defense points. Other condemnations on the basis of this prohibition related to rounding up civilians and putting them in front of military units in conflicts with the former Yugoslavia and Liberia. How the fuck do some of these things work externally? Oh, I just realized all of these are done. Oh, I shouldn't have. I just like... Oh my god. Are there any millennials that, when you guys learned how to type in type class, they told you that you were supposed to put 2 spaces behind periods? Anybody remember learning to type like that? Am I crazy? Wait, I still do that. Wait, are you supposed to do that? Wait, did I just have a stroke? No, you don't do that. Okay, never mind. Okay, Jesus. In review of the indictments on Karadzic and Mladic cases, I don't know. In the case, the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia qualified physically securing or otherwise holding peacekeeping forces against their will at potential NATO air targets, including ammunition bunkers, a radar site, and a communication center as using shields. It concluded that the use of human shields requires an intentional co-location of military objectives and civilians or persons for day combat with the specific intent of trying to prevent the targeting of those military objectives. Okay. Jesus. Karadzic and Mladic. Karadzic. Don't care. Okay. Boom. All right. Okay, we're half the way through our first article. The ICRC has gathered an impressive catalog of evidence in support of its conclusion. Moreover, it is essential to recall that before 1949 Geneva Conventions generally reflect international law. So discussion here. I think we've already put this, right?
Okay, don't worry about tyres, just give it everything. In this test, we just want to make sure we can lap close to our rival's pace.
Experts in the field are in accord. For instance, Rule 44 of the Harvard Air and Missile Warfare Manual is textually similar to Article 51, subsection 7, while Section 2.3.8 of the San Remo Manual on the Laws of Non-International Armed Conflict states the use of civilians as well as captured enemy personnel to shield a military objective or operation is forbidden. It's also forbidden to use them to obstruct an adversary's operations. The United Nations has repeatedly condemned shielding as unlawful. See here, 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 and here. Finally, I would point out that the United States, which is not a party to Additional Protocol 1, is of the view that Article 57, Section 1 reflects customary law. Subsection 1. No, Section 1. Matheson Presentation, DoD Law Board Manual, Section 5.16. Israel shares this view. See here, page 116. And I am aware of no state that has expressly disagreed. International criminal law. The Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court includes utilizing the presence of a civilian or other protected person to render certain points, areas, or military forces immune from military operations as a war crime. The elements of the crime are... Okay, hold on. Boom. Okay, so we've got the Geneva Conventions. Would you call it Geneva Convention or Conventions? Geneva Conventions? The Geneva Convention. I mean, like, fuck, Geneva Conventions. Okay. We've got International Humanitarian Law Database for customary. And then we've got... Okay, let's do... the International Criminal Court. It's the Geneva Convention.
Quali Sim. We've estimated the times our closest rivals will be doing, so that's what we need to beat.
International Criminal Court. Article 8 is war crimes. International Criminal Court, Article 8. Article 8 of what? What's it called? The Statute of the International Criminal Court? Is that what we call these? Statute of the International Criminal Court. This is the treaty that established the court. Is the Rome Statute the same thing as the statute that defines all the crimes, or are there two different statutes, or would it all just be considered the Rome Statute and that was part of the treaty? The Rome Statute establishes 4 core international crimes. Rome Statute is
Okay, don't worry about tyres, just give it everything. In this test, we just want to make sure we can lap close to our rival's pace.
What is the Biden sanctions of settler violence just announced? Basically anything that fucks over settlers, I'm probably going to say is based. Okay, Statute of the International Criminal Court.
Okay, expect to see some rain about 10 to 15 minutes from now.
This would be treaties and customary law, right? This would be the Rome Statute be
this is the
considered a
quali sim.
treaty?
We've estimated the times our closest rivals will be doing, so that's what we need to beat.
I just reported earnings. Have you ever shared your big week? I sold all that.
Okay, don't worry about tyres,
No,
just
really,
give
nobody
it
knows. It's
everything.
usually somebody in chat
In
like
this
that.
test, we just want to make sure we can lap close to our rival's pace.
Comprising a preamble and 13 parts, establishes the governing framework of the court. Elements of crimes. Elements of crimes are okay. This is where we find war crimes. Core legal text is 7 documents that together form the basis of the court's legal framework: the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, the rules of procedure and evidence, the elements of crimes, the regulations of the court, the regulations of the registry, the regulations of the office of the prosecutor, and the code of professional conduct for counsel. Most important of these, the first to be adopted and enforced was the statute, which establishes the court following the remaining 6 texts entered into force at various points during the court's history. All can be amended according to their own particular amendment procedure. Okay. Gotcha. Okay, so Statute of the International Criminal Court. just call this International Criminal Court. And then we would say under the book Elements of Crimes. And then this is where we get Article 8 for war crimes. Elements of crimes. This is and then this particular part of the code has Articles 6, 7, and 8. Okay. Come on, Nobody Special. Thanks for gifting 10 memberships in the chat. I could actually just make all of this. Elements. Okay. Let's do that actually. So we're just to see Dusty not just argue with people. Listen, I'll start arguing with people. We have Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. Statutes. We've got rules of procedure and evidence. Rules. We've got elements of crimes. We've got regulations of the courts. We've got regulations of the office of the prosecutor. Regulations of the registry. Code of professional conduct. Counsel. Code of conduct for the office of the prosecutor. Code of judicial ethics. Wait, is this a separate thing or? What is the consensus on international law? Give me like
Wow, that was a heck
one
of an
day and
impact. Let me know you're okay.
I'll tell you everything. Get fucked. Official journal. What is the official journal? Doesn't look like this. Elements of crimes. Okay, so we go to Article 8, which is war crimes. Introduction, and then Article 8.2a, Article 8.2a1. Wait, what is Article 8.2.1? Is it just the intro? Article 7, Article 7.1a, Article 7.1b, against humanity, crimes against humanity of murder, crimes against humanity. Why did they skip Article 8.1? Whatever. Destiny, I might be wrong, but I think this is referring to the Article 8 in the Rome Statute. No, I don't believe so. I think that there are a collection of texts that make up the International Criminal Court, and the Rome Statute is just the first of those texts. But if I'm correct, and if my understanding is correct, There is no Article 8 of the Rome Statute, technically. The Rome Statute will probably only have a couple articles. Oh, it doesn't have any... Oh, no, wait. Oh, it does have articles. Oh, but it's articles under parts. Oh, no, wait, what the fuck? No, it is Article 8 of the Rome Statute of the International... Okay, I don't understand. I don't understand the names of any of this. Okay, wait. So is the Rome Statute of the International is the international treaty that founded the court, comprising a preamble and 13 parts. It establishes the governing framework for the court. Adopted the statute set out the court's jurisdiction over genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and the amendment from crime of aggression. In addition to jurisdiction, it also addresses the Rome Statute of the International... Okay, so the Rome Statute is everything? The Rome Statute is the only document the ICC and may refer to the Geneva Convention of war crimes. Okay, no, just forget it. I don't know.
It looks like rain is inbound and we're expecting it in around 5
Is there a
minutes,
difference
5 minutes
between
till the rain.
war crimes here in Article 8 versus war crimes here in Article 8? Article 8. War crimes. Elements for war crimes in Article 8, paragraph 2, C and E, is a prohibition addressed in Article 8, paragraph 2 and F, are not elements of war crimes. Interpreted and established framework for international law of armed conflict, including as appropriate international law of armed conflict applicable to armed conflict at sea, with respect to the last two elements listed for each crime. There is no requirement for legal evaluation by the perpetrator as to the existence of an armed conflict or its character as international. There is no requirement for legal evaluation of the perpetrator. In that context, there is no requirement for awareness by the perpetrator of the facts that establish the character of the conflict as international. There is only a requirement for the awareness of the factual circumstances that establish the existence of an armed conflict that is implicit in the terms took place in the context of and was associated with. So, okay. Structure the elements of the crime of genocide, structure the corresponding provisions of Articles 6, 7, and 8 of the Rome Statute. Some paragraphs of those articles in the Rome Statute list multiple crimes, and those elements of crime appear in separate paragraphs. Crimes are reproduced from the official records in some way. Oh, okay. So Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court does include all of the everything. Okay. Holy Christ. But elements of crimes will have, I guess, more ways to codify or ways to assess, I guess, if a particular crime has been committed, I guess? Okay. Okay. That's okay. Got it. So what is he referring to here? Okay, the Rome Statute of the International includes utilizing the presence of a civilian or other protected person around certain points, areas, or military forces immune from military operations as a war crime. Article 8, subsection 2B23. And then, okay, so here he's referencing 8.2B23, 2B, and then 23.
Okay,
Yes. Okay. Okay. My God, International Criminal Court. Yeah, Azure Cloud. It kind of sounds like a what we would call like a strict liability offense. Bro, can I really not? Oh my god. It's okay. Part 1.
We've had to spend time repairing the damage to the car.
How many parts of this are there? Bro. I might take more notes on the same picture, so
The
let's do it
session
right
is
now.
drawn.
Part 3. General Principles of Criminal Law. Alright, it's okay. Establishment of the court. Jurisdiction, admissibility, and applicable law. Composition and administration of the court. Investigation and prosecution. Right, we don't need parrots out of this. The trial. Penalties. Appeal and revision. International cooperation and judicial assistance. Enforcement. Assembly of states, parties. Financing. Final clauses. Okay. War crimes still have a mens rea element. See Article 30 Rome Statute. How do you define, like, mens rea technically? So, like, I'm curious, where's Pisco at? Where's my crim law people at? Could you argue that, like, strict liability crimes have some kind of... No, mens rea just means criminal intent, right? Because, like, even for a strict liability crime, you still have to actually do the thing, even if you don't know the thing is wrong, right? Like, say, for instance, like, statutory rape is a strict liability crime. If you have sex with a minor, then it's always wrong, even if you didn't know, even if you saw a whatever, like a fake ID or whatever. But if you were, like, unconscious, and then somebody threw a minor on your dick, and then, like, pulled them off, you wouldn't get charged with a crime there, right? Like, don't you still have to have don't you have to do the original action or prove that you, like, had the mens rea to do the underlying action? I don't know if they would even count as mens rea, because I think mens rea just means, like, criminal intent. Like, if you violated a strict liability crime, but you didn't even mean to do the underlying thing for the strict liability crime, does that... Intent, recklessness, and negligence refer to different mens rea. The action is called actus reus. Oh. So you'd have to prove the action, that you did the action, I guess? Okay. This is 1, 2... No, wait. These need to be 3, I think. The International Criminal Court. Oh, wait. This was supposed to be under this. Fuck. This is 2. Okay. These need to go... here. And then these are all 3s. have Article 8. War crimes. Okay, 8 subsection 2. Is there a way that I can switch, like, these are like dots. Can I switch these to, like, numbers, or am I able to do that? Without, like, 'cause I know I can make this, like, 1, and then it'll make, I think it'll make all of these numbered. Like, if I want to vary it, or no? Court shall have jurisdiction in respect of war crimes, particularly when committed as part of a plan or policy, or as part of a large-scale commission of such crimes. Jurisdiction over war crimes, particularly when committed as part of a plan or policy, or as part of a large-scale commission of such crimes. For the purposes of the statute, war crimes means you would need the next. You would need to next the next line to get a debt. I don't even know. That sentence just gave me AIDS. You're banned for 1 hour for even typing that sentence.
And with qualifying complete, let's review our top 3 today. Norris, Leclerc, and Max Verstappen. With qualifying
so 8,
complete, all
2.
that remains now is the main event. We'll be live and uninterrupted for the Grand Prix tomorrow, so make sure you join us then.
Grave breaches of Geneva Convention of the 12th of August 1949, namely any of the following acts against persons or property protected under the provisions of the relevant Geneva Conventions. Is there no way to, like, change, like, these labelings from, like, letters to any Obsidian guys? Oh, I can just look that. Never mind. Have to go all the way to 23. Holy shit. I want all this shit. I guess I could just put it in like this, I guess. So A, B. This works. Oh, reservers, thank you.
That looked bad. Are you alright? Let me know you're okay.
Different symbols for different levels of bullet points. I seem to be able to stumble upon bits of CSS code for changeable. Okay, I'm sure someone understands what CSS will probably just figure it out. Using the following. Bro, is this not like a plugin? I'm not fucking. hopefully this works. And then we've got elements of crime, which is here. Okay. Elements of crime. Okay, these are, oh my god, fuck me, okay. This is all under the Rome statute. And then we have a separate thing called elements of crime here. Okay. Okay, and then for elements of crime, we have Article 8. War crimes. The elements of war crimes under Article 8, Paragraph 2, Scene E are subject to limitations. Elements of war crime, we've already got this last 10 months. Listed for each crime. Okay. We should have this. Okay, there is no requirement for a legal evaluation by the perpetrator as to the existence of an armed conflict or its character as international or non-international. In that context, there's no requirement for awareness by the perpetrator of the facts that establish the character of the conflict as international or non-international. There's only a requirement for the awareness of the factual circumstances to establish the existence of an armed conflict that is implicit in the terms took place in the context of and was associated with. Okay. Okay. And then we've got this would be like the introduction. Boom. And then we've got Article 8 to B23. 8 to B23. Jesus fucking Christ. I just watched your debate with Jank. Your best point was talking about justice, not peace, as the centerpiece of any resolution. But you were pretty weak in how you failed to address the ethical responsibility nations have during war and armed conflict. Yeah, sure. It's always going to come off as weak because people don't know what the actual obligations are. People think that the obligations are that you can never, ever, ever kill civilians, or if civilians are present, you can never, ever, ever bomb the area. That's what people think. So it's like, it's always going to sound weird when I say, actually, you can do that. But, it's, I don't care. I don't give a fuck. Right now. Okay, Jesus. Okay, 8-2-B-23. 8-2-B. Article 8. Two B23. Oh my fucking god. 23. Okay. War crime of using protected persons as shields. Elements. Is there actually a difference between Holocaust and genocide, like Jenk said? I've never heard that distinction in my life, other than the Holocaust refers to a particular genocide. I've never heard that distinction, but maybe there is one and I'm just not sure. I don't know. Okay. The elements of the crime are, Jesus, the perpetrator moved or otherwise took advantage of the location of one or more civilians or other persons protected under the international law of armed conflict. The perpetrator intended to shield a military objective from attack or shield, favor, or impede military operations. The conduct took place in the context of and was associated with an international armed conflict, and the perpetrator was aware of factual circumstances that established the existence of an armed conflict. Okay. Okay. There was something about like the last two. Oh, with respect to the last two elements listed for each crime. I should have this. Actually, we should just have all of this. Okay. Christ. Okay, from now on, if you're in any chat, if you keep making this weird comment about how Destiny never reads his chat, you're just getting banned, okay? Bye, Nuanced Nuda Branch. It's one of the like most annoying things to get pinged for. Destiny, have you ever debated Aquinas' 5 ways on stream before? I'm looking for some good defeaters. Most people, atheists and Christians, suck at stealing Aquinas. Is that was just like the arguments, like the formal syllogisms for God? I don't remember. Don't remember, don't care. Guy's old. If you get into anything about where intent falls into the calculation of human shielding, not that much, but I mean like Imagine, okay, the perpetrators were affections establish the, okay. Numerous criminal cases have confirmed that using human shields amounted to a war crime. See e.g. U.S. military tribunal at Nuremberg, on leave, blah, 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 blah. Although no express provision in the Rome Statute bans the use of human shields in non-international armed conflict, the practice can be characterized as unlawful cruel treatment. Article 8, subsection 2c I, especially in situations where the protected person is aware of being used as a shield. Okay. Article 2c I. Okay, so we can find this I think fast. Okay, so we're talking about the Rome Statute. This up. We would go to Article. Wait, where was it? Article 2c(I). So Article 2. Wait, no, I'm sorry. It's Article 8, right? Wait, no. Article 8. Okay, Article 8, subsection 2c(I). Article 8, subsection 2, and then Part C, and then 1. Okay. So this would be under the Rome Statute.
Fantastic, you've got pole position.
2. We have Article 8. We would do Article 8, Section 2, and then we would have Part C, and then we would have Part 1.
With qualifying finished, it's time
C
to remind
is, in
ourselves
case of an
once
armed
again
conflict,
of our
not of
top
an international
three.
character, serious
Chambers,
violations of Article 3,
Hamilton,
common to the
and
4 Geneva
Charles
Conventions
Leclerc.
of August 12,
Goodbye for now then,
1949,
but really,
namely,
we're just
any of the
getting
following acts
started.
committed against persons
Be sure
taking
to join
no
us again
active part in
for
hostilities,
Lights
including
Out
members of armed
tomorrow.
forces who have laid down their arms, and those placed hors de combat by sickness, wounds, detention, or any other cause. Violence to life and person, in particular murder of all kinds, mutilation, cruel treatment, and torture. but no express. Okay, the practicing character is unlawful cruel treatment. Article 8, 2, C, 1. Especially in situations where the protected person is aware of being used as a shield. So he's adding this part. Okay. Wow, Nodello, thanks for, wait, are you the guy that just banned? Nope, you're not. Okay. Finally, some states, including the United States, have criminalized human shielding in their domestic law. Nuances in the prohibition. Using civilian objects to shield. The general prohibition on using human shields does not extend to using civilian objects, such as civilian residences or schools, to shield from attack, only if there are civilians or other protected persons in them, and it is the intent that their presence be used to shield against attack. Is there a violation of the rule? Edmund, thanks for the 20 bucks, buddy. Instead, this conduct would violate the defender's obligation. General prohibition on using human shields does not extend to using civilian. Okay, instead, this conduct would violate the defender's obligation to take feasible precautions to protect civilians and civilian objects under its control from the effects of attack. So-called passive precautions, codified for parties in Article 58 of Additional Protocol 1 for International Armed Conflict, the ICRC characterizes the obligation, correctly in my estimation, as customary in both international and non-international armed conflict, under Rule 22. Okay, so we're talking, okay, Article 58, so we're go to Additional Protocol 1. We have Article, why don't I have Article 12 linked here? This would be Article 52, 57, we don't have Article 58. Fuck it, let's add it. Now, do I need to add every single article? Actually, fuck it, you know what, we will. Will add every single one because I got nothing else going on in my day. Article 58.
Formula One returns to Monte Carlo once again today, home to the world-famous Monte Carlo
Cautions
Casino,
against
that first
the
opened in
effects of
1863.
attacks.
And of course, a certain road race first held in 1929.
The parties
No
to this
greater
conflict
occasion,
shall,
no
to the
more
maximum extent
valuable a win
feasible,
than the Monaco Grand
without prejudice to Article 49 of the Fourth Geneva Convention, endeavor to remove
It's time to take a look at our starting grid
the civilian
for today's
population,
race.
and individual civilians and civilian objects under their control from the vicinity of military objectives.
Okay, we've got that relief of having points on the board
Avoid
finally, so let's keep
locating
that form
military
up and get another
objectives
top 10
within or near
finish
densely
today, please.
populated areas. And take the other necessary precautions to protect the civilian population, individual civilians, and civilian objects under their control against the dangers resulting from military operations. And then there's also Rule 22. Hold on, okay, so we're done with this. Okay, International Humanitarian Law Database. Rule 22. Rule 22. Okay. Principles of precautions against the effects of attacks. The parties of the conflict must take all feasible precautions to protect the civilian population and civilian objects under their control against the effects of attack. Practice summary. Blah 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 blah. Okay. Practice. We've got the summary. State practice establishes this rule as a norm of customary international law, applicable in both international and non-international armed conflicts. This is a basic rule in which more content is given by the specific obligations contained in Rules 23 to 24. The practice collected in terms of those specific obligations is also relevant to prove the existence of this rule and vice versa. International armed conflicts. The duty of each party to the conflict to take all feasible precautions to protect the civilian population and civilian objects under its control against the effects of attacks set forth in Article 58, Section C of the Additional Protocol 1, to which no reservations have been made. Let's see, numerous military manuals restate the duty of both parties to the conflict to take all feasible precautions to protect the civilian population and civilian objects under their control against the effects of attacks. The obligation is supported by official statements and reported practice. This practice includes that of states not or not at the time party to Additional Protocol 1. Non-international conflicts. The obligation to take all feasible precautions to protect the civilian population and civilian objects against the effects of attacks was included in the draft of Additional Protocol 2, but was dropped at the last moment as part of a package aimed at the adoption of a simplified text. As a result, Additional Protocol 2 does not explicitly require precautions against the effects of attacks. Article 13, Section 1 requires that the civilian population and individual civilians shall enjoy general protection against the dangers arising from military operations. It would be difficult to comply with this requirement without taking precaution against the effects of attack. The requirement to take precautions against the effects of attacks has, moreover, been included in more recent treaty law applicable in non-international armed conflicts, namely the Second Protocol to the Hague Convention for the Protection of Cultural Property. In addition, this rule is contained in other instruments pertaining also to non-international armed conflicts. Military manuals which are applicable or have been applied in non-international armed conflicts specify the requirement to take precaution against the effects of attack. It is supported by reported practice. So like religious artifact, yeah, I figured. I don't know what the body that they're referring to. The Hague Convention for the Protection of Cultural Property. I don't know.
Engine off, engine off.
1965, the 20th International Conference of the Red Cross adopted a resolution calling on governments and other authorities responsible for actions in all armed conflicts to spare the civilian population as much as possible. This was reaffirmed by the UN General Assembly in a resolution on respect for human rights and armed conflict adopted in 1968. In addition, in a resolution adopted in 1970 on basic principles for the protection of civilian populations in armed conflicts, the UN General Assembly required that in the conduct of military operations, every effort should be made to spare civilian populations from the ravages of war, and all necessary precautions should be taken to avoid injury, loss, or damage to civilian populations. The jurisprudence of the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia in the Krpresic case provides further evidence of the customary nature of the requirement to take precautions against the effects of attack in both international and non-international armed conflicts. In its judgment, the tribunal considered that this rule was customary because it specified and fleshed out general pre-existing norms. It can be argued, indeed, that the principle of distinction, see Rule 27, which is customary in international and non-international armed conflicts, inherently requires respect for this rule. The tribunal also relied on the fact that this rule had not been contested by any state. This study found no official contrary practice either. Okay. This practice should be read together with the extensive practice and the prohibition of the use of human shields, the deliberate violation of the obligation to take all feasible precautions against the effects of attacks is often related to the use of human shields. In addition, international case law has confirmed the obligation under international human rights law to take positive steps to protect life. Examples of precautions against the effects of attacks. Specific examples of how the general obligation to take precautions against the effects of attacks that have implemented include first and foremost the two specific obligations identified in Rules 23 and 24. In addition, practice has shown that the construction of shelters, digging of trenches, distribution of information and warnings, withdrawal of the civilian population to safe places, direction of traffic, guarding of civilian property, and the mobilization of civil defense organizations are measures that can be taken to spare the civilian population and civilian objects under the control of a party to the conflict. S is SH, DZ is J. Yeah, but I'm never doing that. Feasibility of precautions against the effects of attack. The obligation to take precautions against the effects of attacks, to the extent feasible, has been interpreted by many states as meaning that the obligation is limited to those precautions which are practicable or practically possible, taking into account all circumstances ruling at the time, including humanitarian and military considerations. The rapporteur of the working group at the diplomatic conference leading to the adoption of the additional protocols reported that after the phrase "to the maximum extent feasible," had been introduced to qualify all subparagraphs of Article 58, agreement was quickly reached. According to the rapporteur, I don't know how to pronounce this. This revision reflected the concern of small and densely populated countries, which would find it difficult to separate civilians and civilian objects from military objectives, and that even large countries would find such separation difficult or impossible to arrange in many cases. On ratification of Additional Protocol 1, Austria and Switzerland stated that the obligation would be applied subject to the requirements of the defense of the national territory. State practice indicates that an attacker is not prevented from attacking military objectives if the defender fails to take appropriate precautions or deliberately uses civilians to shield military operations. The attacker remains bound in all circumstances, however, to take appropriate precautions in attack and must respect the principle of proportionality, even though the defender violates international humanitarian law. Let's see. Information required for deciding upon precautions against the effects of attack. Rapporteur. Numerous states have indicated that military commanders have to reach decisions concerning the taking of precautions against the effects of attack on the basis of their assessment of the information from all sources which is available to them at the relevant time.
3 seconds.
Okay, got this. Instead, this would violate the defender's obligation. Rule sort of has to we got this. For Rule 22, which is what we just. Alright. Lycan is cooking you. For what? I don't think Lycan has been correct on almost anything relating to. I still don't think he has a good understanding of what any of this exactly means, but you're welcome to join if you want.
Happy to, buddy. And it's just gonna be a quick thing. And what you just read is what I've said, and said and said and said. So every time someone wants to bring up and say, what is Israel supposed to do? They're using human shields. You can't blame Israel. I say, just because they're using human shields doesn't mean you get to kill the human shields willy-nilly. You still have to take into consideration proportionality, proper method of approach, and all that other shit. That's it. So I was right on that.
Okay, so then, firstly, did you ever make the statement that you're not allowed to consider harm to your own army if you're going to attack an enemy thing that has civilians in it? Do you still stand by that statement, or?
No, I never said you can't consider it. I said you can't put the blame on it. And I will say I was too firm on that. You can't disregard that and just say, well, I want to protect my troops, so any action I take to protect them is fine. That's the main thrust of what I was getting at.
Okay.
But
I don't think we
I don't
disagree
think
on
that.
that.
Okay. All right. Very short ribs tonight, David. You said anything, so
Yep.
got protein.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, hey, did you get your book?
It comes tomorrow.
Okay, cool. Bye.
Okay. It should be cautioned that, as noted, medical units enjoy special protection from being used to shield under Additional Protocol 1, Article 12, Section 4. This provision develops Article 19 of Geneva Convention 1, which imposes an obligation to situate as far as possible medical units and establishments in such a manner that attacks against military objectives cannot imperil their safety. See also DoD Law of War Manual. Cultural property enjoys similar protection, as noted in the DoD Law of War Manual. It is prohibited to use deliberately the threat of potential harm cultural property, including some places of worship, such as mosques, to shield military objectives from attack, or otherwise to shield, favor, or impede military operations. There is no waiver of this obligation in cases of imperative military necessity, citing Hague Cultural Property Convention, Article 4. In some cases, therefore, using religious or cultural property to shield would violate both the general prohibition by levying presence to the military side and the special protection that attaches to the facility itself. Protection. Okay. Use of human shields. How would I organize this? Would I organize this by party or by conflict? Like conflict and party, or party conflict? Conflict and party? I feel like I would want to be able to look up. What would I want to know more? Who committed war crimes, or which war crimes were committed in this event? What am I more likely to know? I feel like if I have a conflict, I'm always going to know the parties involved. So I feel like I would want to know by parties. Okay, so we're going to go by parties first. So we've got Hamas, and we've got what war is this considered? Israel, Hamas, Israel, Gaza, war. What are they calling this one?
Okay, mate.
Do we have a name for this one yet?
Okay, I've got a brand new race strategy.
We're gonna say, good night. How can you sleep? You're supposed to sleep. We'll say October 7th. Gaza, Israel war. Right?
In this lap, push now.
What would we call like work, like use of human shield? What would we call it? Examples? Or crimes? I guess instead of calling this article human shield, we just call it like war crimes. Maybe that's a better thing. Oh, incidents. That's a good one. Why do they do this like this? Israel Moss 2023 Symposium. Is and is not human shielding. By Michael M. Schmidt. There we go. Jesus. There's no violation of the prohibition on human shielding absent an intention to use protect. Okay, there is no violation.
Delighted with that. That was our last stop. No more scheduled pit stops. Let's go.
Let's find some of the best articles on Warstorm might be worthwhile to look. Isn't that what I'm reading right now? There was no violation of the prohibition on human shielding absent an intention to use the protected persons to shield against the enemy's attack or otherwise impede its operations. As the DoD Law of War Manual notes, in the absence of purposeful action to put protected persons and objects at risk of harm from enemy military operations, there would be no violation. Indeed, in many situations, operating near civilians may be unavoidable, especially during urban operations like those in Gaza City. But operating in their vicinity or bringing protected persons into military objectives and the hope that the enemy's operations will be affected is a flagrant violation. It should be emphasized that LOAC prohibits human shielding irrespective of whether the shields are harmed or the shielding affects the enemy's operations. The violation lies in their mere use for the intended purpose. Moreover, the requisite intention includes both shielding and impeding. To illustrate, placing a rocket launcher in a heavily populated residential area with the intent that the presence of civilians will protect it from attack is shielding. Directing civilians to move down a road that the enemy needs to travel on in order to impede that movement likewise violates the prohibition.
Look at a new race strategy after.
Operation Iron Swords or Operation Swords of Iron, just the Israeli name of the current conflict. Oh, let's do that. Operation Iron Swords. On a road that the enemy needs to travel. Okay. Some cases are clear, as with Hamas's taking of hostages into Gaza, which is separately a LOAC violation and war crime. So here, destroy Hamas and their hostages held in Gaza. Are those rules compatible? Holy shit. So, hostage taking. I should cite too.
Behind's just boxed for mediums. Car behind on the medium tyre now.
While they might have been seized as bargaining chips in future prisoner trades, there is little question that they are also being used as human shields. Placing fighters or equipment next to, in or under facilities where there are many civilians when there appears to be no military need to do so, or reasonably available alternatives exist, as in the case of a hospital or school, is a powerful indicator of intent. As the DoD Law of War Manual observes, an adversary's intention to violate this rule is likely to be clear because that adversary normally would make it apparent to the opposing party that attacks against the military objective being shielded would risk harming protected persons or objects. Probably an interesting quote, I guess. Other cases are less clear. For instance, Hamas and other fighters are likely among those civilians fleeing Gaza City. The fighters are on the evacuation route solely to retreat from the area into which the IDF is striking. There is no human shielding, even though civilians are using the same route. However, if they chose to retreat, or if they choose to retreat on that route because of the presence of civilians, they are using human shields. The difficulty would lie in determining their motivation. Although a particular action by Hamas may not qualify as using human shields, the customary requirement to take passive precautions would still apply. As explained in Article 58 of Additional Protocol 1, the defender must avoid locating military objectives within or near densely populated areas and has to take other necessary precautions to protect the civilian population, individual civilians, and civilian objects under their control against the dangers resulting from military operations, thus operating in the vicinity of civilians and civilian objects and thereby placing them at significant risk of being harmed incidentally during attacks. When doing so is clearly avoidable, violates the requirement. It is a customary law applicable to this conflict. So we would say co-locating military objectives densely populated areas. We have to find articles for this. I'm like positive that articles have been written about this.
That's P3. You're into the podium positions. Well done.
Do you think Greenwald had a good response to McCarthy not repicking 2 of the J6 inquiry picks? No, those are just trash. And it's obvious what McCarthy was trying to do, which is exactly what I said, which is trying to make it so that losers like Greenwald in the future can say, hey, look, it was a partisan commission, by not throwing anybody on the commission at all. Impact of human shielding on the enemy. Article 51.8 of Additional Protocol 1 provides that a violation by the enemy of the human shielding prohibition does not release the attacker from its legal obligations with respect to the civilian population and civilians, including the obligation to take precautionary measures provided for in Article 57. This means that the human shields continue to factor into proportionality calculations, and that the attacker must do everything feasible in the circumstances to avoid harming them, so-called active precautions. For instance, an attacker must consider alternative tactics, weapons, and targets that would yield a similar effect on the enemy while placing the shields at less risk of harm. I believe this provision reflects customary law. Also see the ILA Study Group report, page 360. However, this view is not universal. In particular, the UK Manual on the Law of Armed Conflict asserts, even where human shields are being used, the proportionality rule must be considered. However, if the defenders put civilians or civilian objects at risk by placing military objectives in their midst or by placing civilians in or near military objectives, this is a factor to be taken into account in favor of the attackers in considering the legality of attacks on those objectives. As Yoram Dinstein explains, the general practice of states has traditionally stamped with approval the approach that should civilian casualties ensue from an illegal attempt to shield combatants or a military objective, the ultimate responsibility lies with the belligerent party, putting the civilians at risk. Notably, he does not suggest that the human shield should be disregarded altogether, but instead that their inclusion in the proportionality calculation can take account of the enemy's unlawful conduct. Of course, from a practical perspective, a party violating law of armed conflict by using shields can effectively bar its enemy from attack if there are enough human shields to render the attack excessive under the rule of proportionality. Hey, if you bring up Metasag again, you're getting banned. Please, stop. Holy shit. Nobody cares. Please, stop. It's after hours. Volume is low. Stop. Please, stop. Please, stop. Bring up Meta. No one cares. Stop. Holy shit. My god. But in my view, a malevolent party to this conflict should not be able to deprive civilians of the protections they enjoy from attack. Such an interpretation appears to skew the military necessity, humanitarian considerations, balance, and law of armed conflict too far in the direction of the former. Voluntary human shield. There's also a long-standing debate among law of armed conflict experts over whether civilians who voluntarily shield military objectives need to be considered in the attacker's proportionality and precautions and attack assessments. The ICRC and many respected scholars believe they do not sacrifice their full protection as civilians through their actions. However, in my opinion, individuals who intentionally leverage their civilian status to impede the enemy's operations are directly participating in hostilities and therefore lose these protections from attacks for such time as they do so participate. This is the position of the United States, Israel, and many prominent scholars. The distinction between involuntary and voluntary shields makes sense, for the latter act to deprive themselves of their LOAC protections, whereas the former are being victimized. To the extent that voluntary shields can de facto cause the attacker to hesitate or de jure, render the attack disproportionate, if they do not lose civilian protections, makes an attack impossible. It would seem clear that they are participating in the hostilities very directly. However, although attacks on direct participants technically are permissible under the laws of armed conflict, Israel does not conduct them. Instead, the direct participation status of voluntary shields only affects the application of the proportionality and precautions in attack rules during Israeli operations. Interesting. There's an important caveat that bears directly on the situation in Gaza. Many Gazans have ignored the IDF warnings from the south. If they have done so because they are hoping to complicate IDF operations, they qualify as voluntary human shields. The IDF need not consider them when conducting these operations, but everyone else retains full civilian protections, regardless of motivation for staying. Some may be unable to move because of infirmity, some may not wish to move, as is often the case with the elderly, and some may sympathize with Hamas. In all these cases, they should, in my opinion, be treated as involuntary human shields by the IDF. The IDF agrees. In its 2014 Operation Protective Edge in Gaza, the IDF urged the civilian population to evacuate the area of operations and identified evacuation routes, just as it is doing today. Many did not heed the warning. I later had the opportunity to meet with a senior IDF legal advisor and discuss the matter in depth. They uniformly rejected the premise that such individuals should be treated as voluntary shields. When there is a reasonable doubt regarding the voluntariness of their shielding, the civilians must be assumed to be acting involuntary. Some cases are not equivocal. The classic case of obvious voluntariness in Gaza during past exchanges is that going to a building that the IDF had warned will be attacked and standing on the roof, waving Hamas flags, be visible to the IDF. A key caveat is that children who lack mental capacity to be treated as having acted voluntarily are always involuntary shields. It's a matter of law. Jesus. Do you think other countries ever get mad that we have like the .gov domain? Like, what about like any other country? They have to be like .AUS, .gov, or some other tough shit.
There's a new strategy available on the MFD.
Australia's .edu, yeah, but it's not .gov. You know? Get fucked. This is in 2014, right?
Okay, listen, don't worry about it, mate. It can happen to the best of us. Now look, I've put a new strategy option for you in the MFD, so
Is
go
that
have a look.
Protective Edge for 2014?
strategy options if you go and check your MFD.
Hamas's efforts to keep the civilians in place. Hamas is actively discouraging civilians from evacuating to the south and is reportedly even preventing them. Wait, who joined?
It's me. I'm just waiting for you to finish your thoughts so I can give you a suggestion.
Hamas is actively discouraging civilians from evacuating to the south and is reportedly even preventing them from leaving, as in the case of blocking roads. Both actions qualify as using human shields. While there may be other motivations for the encouragement, it would be naive to believe that Hamas does not intend the presence of civilians to frustrate IDF operations. Indeed, as I've explained elsewhere, Hamas had a duty to encourage the civilian population to evacuate by the IDF warning. After all, the use of civilian shields is a classic technique in asymmetric warfare for militarily weaker forces. See my discussion here. Of course, given the IDF's air and ground operations into Gaza, Hamas's efforts to physically prevent civilians from leaving unambiguously qualifies the use of human shields. Again, it should be emphasized that passive precautions are meant to prevent or lessen the intermingling of civilians and civilian objects with fighters and military objectives. Therefore, in addition to these actions amounting to the unlawful use of human shields, they violate passive precautions obligations to take measures to protect the civilian population. Sadly, as the fighting becomes more intense, the possibility of civilians fleeing from the area is diminishing. And concluding thoughts, 2 more paragraphs. Whether this armed conflict is international or non-international in character, using human shields is strictly prohibited. However, the concept of human shielding and the law of armed conflict is narrower than sometimes characterized. In particular, it does not encompass merely acting in the proximity of civilians without intending to use their presence to affect enemy military operations, nor does it extend to using civilian property to shield unless that property is subject to special protection, as with medical facilities and cultural property. Nevertheless, Hamas has violated the prohibition by, among other acts, using hostages as shields, preventing civilians from leaving northern Gaza. It has also violated obligations not to use specially protected facilities as shields. Even when its actions do not amount to unlawful shielding, they are subject to the requirements to take feasible passive precautions to safeguard the civilian population. But it must be emphasized that violations of these obligations by Hamas do not release Israel from its obligations to, inter alia, consider involuntary human shields and proportionality calculations when assessing feasible precautions and impact. Alright, I will say.
Hey, so I was thinking, just because you're looking at incidences, obviously you'll look at Mosul, but you should also look at the civil war in Sri Lanka towards the end, so the 2009 period, because as the front got increasingly smaller, the Sri Lankan army designated no-fire zones, but then started to shell those no-fire zones profusely, saying that the Tamil Tigers had moved civilians into the no-fire zones to make those no-fire zones human shielded areas. And so that changed the kind of discussion around human shields very much into that proximate area where suddenly it was defined spatially instead of based on intent. So now anyone in the proximate area of a military location can be targeted and lose their civilian status because they're a human shield. But that creates complications for all urban warfare, because obviously, as we saw with Mosul as well, how do you define the limits? Like, as long as ISIS fighters were in Mosul, the entirety of Mosul was considered to be an area that was using human shields. So it becomes
I think
really
then the
slippery.
I think the argument was that the belligerent then just has to try to take some precautions to allow the people to flee. So I think, wouldn't you say that that precaution is only satisfied if the belligerent is giving notice to the population somehow that they need to leave the area, or else?
Well, that was the problem with the end of Sri Lanka, is that the front became so small and the no-fire zones were being attacked, there was nowhere for them to flee. So
then I think in that case, that's why they say, like, I think under the ICC stuff, it's supposed to be like when feasible, right? Is what follows most.
But that
of
does that mean that in any urban warfare there are no civilians?
No, they're still civilians, but I think that the distinction isn't whether or not they're civilians. The distinction is whether or not it's a military target or a civilian target. Whether or not it's even if it's declared a military target, there are civilians, you still have to use them in your proportionality calculations.
But if
right?
we say that the whole of Mosul is anyone in Mosul is a human shield, right? Not because of intent, not because of the intent of the belligerent, so ISIS, or because of the intent of the people staying there. Just pure proximity to ISIS fighters means that if you are in Mosul, you are a human shield, and you have thus lost, to some extent, the strange dichotomy of both requiring the protections of a civilian to be workable as a human shield, but also losing that protection in that you can be put into a calculation of proportionality and be killed, so it is lawful to kill you. So now, just by being near ISIS, you've lost the protections of being a civilian. There's nothing close. It's not like, oh, I was next to a weapon. It's I was in Mosul, or even in Sri Lanka, I was in a no-fire zone.
Wait, where do you get this lose the protections of being a civilian because you're in a city near ISIS? So you're saying if ISIS is in the city?
So everyone in Mosul was considered a human shield because they were in the proximity of ISIS fighters.
Because they didn't leave, or?
Yeah, because they were in Mosul. If you were in Mosul,
Sure, then
you were a
wouldn't the
human
United
shield.
States consider them involuntary human shields?
But what if there are no? Well, this is why I think you need to look at Sri Lanka, because it became this thing where
we'll
it
just
was,
focus on for Mosul, because I just read in here that apparently Israel and the United States consider some people like involuntary human shields.
yeah, but
that
you
they make
can't
this
know. So this is why I said I know you want to focus on involuntary, but the reason I said proximate is because the involuntary holding of any person with the intent to make them a human shield means that even the people who aren't being involuntarily held but can't leave for other reasons become classified as human shields. Does that make sense?
No.
Okay. So
Or just repeat that. Say that one more time.
Yeah. The existence of some involuntary human shields
Yes.
for people who want to leave but cannot because they are being threatened by a belligerent means that anyone there, whether they are being held involuntarily or not, or they're just choosing not to leave because they live there, they're ill, they're old, for any reason, they are suddenly human shields, even though they were not involuntarily held.
Correct.
So that doesn't seem fair, though, because if human shields traditionally in international law are defined through intent, now international human law just says that a human shield is anyone in the area.
Wow, that
Correct.
was a heck of an impact.
So
Let me
in
know
a
you're
place like
okay.
Sri Lanka, at the end of the civil war, so 2009.
What is that word?
when the
I'm trying
front-
to. It sounds like when you say this, you're saying that like there's a huge problem here. Where is the problem, or what is the part that you're saying like, well, this
Where is
doesn't
the
feel
problem?
right? Yeah.
The problem is that how do you distinguish who gets the protections of a civilian in an urban conflict?
Gotcha.
Does
My
anyone?
understanding is no civilians get protections as long as it's like considered like a military target. That a shield doesn't prevent a target.
But if an entire area, so if let's say the entirety of Gaza is now considered a military target, does every single civilian lose their protections because they're considered human shields?
So in part of what we were reading earlier, I think this was part of the International Humanitarian Law Database for Customary Law. I think you.
I don't know if you'll find an answer, because this is kind of one of the debated things. It's a
Sure,
slippery-
it seemed debated, but like I think they were saying that you couldn't like declare like an entire country, or like it had to be like a reasonable area that was declared. So like for instance, let's say that I walk into New York City and I'm in Manhattan, and somebody in like the Bronx, is like shooting rockets at me. I can't say, oh, all of New York City is now a target. Like I think that has to be like reasonably close. I think that was
No, but like if you look at, let's say, New York City. So in the situation in Sri Lanka, the civil war started in '87. By 2009, there was like, I don't know, a 2-kilometer front left. There was not a lot of places that people could go that was considered a no-fire zone or a safe area that wasn't considered part of the active military zone. So at that stage, pretty much everywhere is considered, just over time,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Like a temporal change in the front. So, and we see that happening in Gaza. It starts at the top, then we're moving our way down, then it's Gaza City, now Khan Yunis is being hit, Rafah's being hit. Like the spaces that are no-fire zones are becoming smaller and smaller and smaller.
Okay.
And it's becoming more and more unrealistic asking people to move. And when you're asking people to move, you're then saying, well, they didn't move, so now they are human shields because we said this is now a military front.
okay.
I know you're saying like no problem, but it is a problem if, as we see warfare turning into more and more, or as warfare takes place more and more in urban environments, there has to be, we can't just be like, we'll leave. There has to be some protections for civilians.
I guess what the reason I'm saying okay is that like I know you're not doing this because I don't think you're doing this. But it sounds like when you're saying that like, well, now they're all human shields. Just because somebody has been turned into a human shield doesn't mean they can be treated as like just military combatants, right? Like they're all taken into account for proportionality sake.
But that's what they say is the contradiction of the human shield, right?
What is
To
it?
be a human shield, you must have the protection of a civilian, because you must change someone's calculations by having the protections of a civilian. But the second you're classified as a human shield, you do lose some of those protections.
So let's see
in that
what
you
effect
are
this
allowed to be
result
harmed
has had
in
on
war.
the
You
drive.
are
Wait, hold
allowed
on.
to be
I'm not. Wait,
Chambers
wait. Can you
increases
focus
their
on that? I've
championship
never
lead.
heard that
Now,
before.
let's discuss
My
it.
understanding is that
Who
when you're
would you
designated as
say
a
is
human
a
shield,
contender
you
for
still have
driver of
all
the
the
day?
protections.
Well, you can't fault anything that
You,
Sergio
wait, I'm
If
not aware
you
if
had
there's like
all
any
of the
protections.
protections, you
Yeah.
couldn't
flawlessly,
you
making
couldn't be
him an
killed.
easy pick.
It's time.
No, you can be killed with full protections as a civilian. No, like if you
I'm fairly sure that the present let civilians have extreme protections not to be targeted. So
no,
even if
wait,
you're in-
hold on. Yeah, to be very, 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 very clear, you can never target civilians. I don't believe you can ever even target human shields. That's what I'm saying. I don't think that there's a. I don't think you lose any protection. You can never target civilians or human shields, but civilians are always possible to be killed as part of collateral in a particular attack. Same thing with human shields.
Yeah, but you
right?
should be taking extreme measures to avoid hurt. Like if you know a civilian is in the area, you should be avoiding that area, right? Like I'm not. Look,
Sure, but my
as I said
understanding is
many
even
times,
for.
I'm not an international law expert or
Yeah, I understand.
anything like that.
My understanding is even for like human shields, you would still have to take into account like the human shields if you're doing an attack, unless they're like voluntary human shields, in which case some people might make arguments that, well, now they're part of the military effort. But even in the case of like somebody using human shields, you still have to take them into account when you're doing your strikes. Like if you put one terrorist in the basement and they have like 20,000 human shields above them because they're all like people that are in an apartment, you can't just say like, oh, well, you know, they're all human shields, so now we don't have to factor them into the proportionality. We just blow them all up, right?
Yeah, It's, and I know what you were saying before in terms of does it even matter in that some parts of, so Israel doesn't adhere to hasn't ratified additional protocol 1, even though some of it is customary law. But I feel like the protections under civilian, like if there weren't protections for civilians, then being a human shield as a concept doesn't make sense.
So I think maybe protections is a bad word. Maybe it should be like considerations is a better word. Like I think that civilians always have special consideration, and civilians can never be targeted ever. But civilians might die, whether they're a human shield or not, as a byproduct of a strike. I think that the only time when you're talking about something being quote unquote protected is I think what we're talking about is the difference between like a military or a civilian target. So like for instance,
So
like,
I was talking
yeah.
about Additional Protocol 2, Article 13.1, on the protection of civilian population. The civilian population and individual civilians shall enjoy general protection against the dangers arising from military
Wait.
operations.
Additional Protocol 2, what thing?
Article 13,
Article
brackets
13.
1.
Wait. Okay. Additional Protocol. Okay. Article 13. Okay. Protection of the civilian population. Okay. The civilian population and individual civilians shall enjoy general protection against the dangers arising from military operations. To give effect to this protection, the following rules should be observed in all circumstances. 2. The civilian population as such, as well as individual civilians, shall not be the object of attack. Acts or threats of violence, the primary purpose of which is to spread terror among the civilian populations, are prohibited, and civilians shall enjoy the protection afforded by this part unless and for such time as they take a direct part in hostilities. Yeah, what if any of this is problematic compared to the human shielding stuff we were talking about?
Well, that's why I was using the
I know
word
we were
protection,
expecting some
in
new
that
developments to come
civilians
through,
get the
but
protection
some
that
of
they
them failed
shouldn't,
protocols
like,
protocol.
to all
You need
extents
to
and
tell the team what
purposes,
to
they
redevelop
shouldn't
via
be
the
the target
RME screen.
of any military action. If you're a human shield, you are the target because you're there and they put you into the calculation
Okay,
that
wait.
they are targeting you.
I think, okay, so maybe this is where we disagree. Or maybe there's like maybe I'm wrong actually. We can flesh this out. So when you say the target of, my understanding is targeting a human shield is always illegal. You can never do that. But you're not targeting a human shield when you're targeting a site that has human shields in it. You're targeting the military objective, and the human shields are considered a byproduct of that. So like for instance, if there was a building and there were 100 human shields on top, and there was like a bad guy in the bottom, and you had a bomb to go and blow up the bad guy in the bottom, that if you were to instead, how would you even make this comparable? Like, you couldn't just kill the civilians on top if it wasn't also going to get the guy in the bottom. You can't target the people on top just because they're human shields. Even if you kill the people on the top, and even if you target the building they're in, what you're really targeting is the military objective of the bad guy. And then the human shields, same as if they were ordinary civilians, are now like in a proportionality calculation, I think. I don't think
Yeah,
target
but the
means,
whole, all of the laws about human shields, right, say that you can't use this person so that a place can't be targeted.
Correct.
So we know that they're. How do I get my thoughts into words? You are essentially, you're going to hit civilians.
Yep.
If you, and I understand what you're saying about proportionality. But do you okay? See if you can help me get my thoughts out. In that, the very existence of a human shield means that you're assuming that there are some extra protections that a civilian is entitled to, and it's got to extend past just being like, obviously proportionality and just like distinction is.
I think
comes into
that's it.
play.
What you just said, I think the proportionality is the only extra protection. So, like, let's say there was a target with 1,000 bad guys, and we go to blow it up. We just blow it up. That's easy. Let's say there's a target with one bad guy and 999 human shields. Well, now we have to see, like, is the perceived military gain, is it worth the collateral destruction of civilian life? Now you have to do that calculation. That's the quote-unquote additional protection. So there might be, and I think one of the references given is like, let's say there's 3 different military targets, all 3 confer the same advantage. Let's say there's 3 ammo depots, 2 of them have human shields present and 1 doesn't. You're obligated to attack the one that doesn't, assuming you get the same military advantage from attacking any of the 3. That's like part of the quote-unquote protection, I think.
Okay, then I want to ask you in like human shields in 2 directions, right? Human shields as the actual crime of human shields. Are you committing the crime of using human shields if you happen to operate in an urban environment, or are you just failing to take the passive precautions?
It's you're probably gonna have to look at a couple of different things going on, but I would assume that, like, in general, the answer is gonna be yes. But I mean, there might be some notable exceptions to this. So, for instance, I'm cautiously saying this. I'm inventing a fantastic scenario because I don't know how the Ukrainian operations have gone. But like in the case where in Mariupol or something, if Ukrainian armed forces are operating in a city and they're being invaded by Russia and they're fighting in that city, I don't know if they're like intending to operate around civilians or hoping to gain an advantage or edge by doing that. They're just fighting in that area. Whereas
which would mean passive precautions weren't necessarily followed, but you can't say that the intent was there to use those people as human shields.
Yeah, and it wasn't feasible otherwise, yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas for Hamas, I think that in the totality of their actions, it seems to be the case, and I guess this would have to be argued, that their intention is to gain an advantage by using said civilian deaths. The fact that they don't report like militant numbers, the fact that they don't report on any of their fighters ever being killed, and the fact that they, dress, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that they do seem to try to gain an advantage by co-locating near civilian infrastructure. But I guess that would be the argument that would be made, yeah.
This is the problem, and then this is the problem in that if you can find 1 or 2 involuntary human shields, does that designate everyone else in that area as an involuntary human shield, even though they were only proximate to begin with? Which is, I don't 100% know, I just know this is super interesting when you look at Sri Lanka. So it's just that I haven't looked at it totally. I just know that the UN found that they didn't use human shields, but they did fail to meet their passive proportion because they ultimately just ended up saying everyone is a human shield. So I think that would be interesting because they were saying that the Tamil Tigers were pushing civilians into areas that were no-fire zones designated by Sri Lanka so that they could also put the Tamil Tigers there to protect them.
Okay.
Oh, also, just while I'm here, there's a paper that I think, because people bring up Goldstone a lot, I don't have institutional access to it, but I'm going to put it in DGG chat because if someone does have institutional access, I think it would be really good for them to download it and send it to you. And I'm going to put your name there so it goes blue. Oh, it was censored. Oh, I can't put. Oh, I got muted. Okay, I'm just gonna send it directly to you. I don't have institutional access to download it, but it's a critical look at the application of international human law in the Goldstone report in terms of human shield claims specifically.
Gotcha. Jesus. Do you know how many? Just curious. Do you know how many pages this thing is?
I don't know how. I don't have access to it. Let me see if it says.
Oh, you haven't actually. Oh, right. Gotcha.
Yeah, that's why I said. Oh, it's 347 to 402, so it's 5 pages.
347 to 402.
Wait, it's 15 pages.
Wait.
I can't. Maths is not.
55. Yeah, you're thinking like time. I think right now. Yeah. 55 pages. I know
Read
it's
it.
yeah. Okay, maybe.
I just think if it's a good thing to because I know the Goldstone report gets brought up a lot, and I would be interested to see what this actually said because it's a critical assessment of IHL in the Goldstone.
Sure. I feel like the biggest issue with the Goldstone report that was really surprising to me was that For a lot of this international law stuff, you have to establish like what's being targeted by the belligerent. So Israel, you have to establish like what they're aiming for, what the objectives are, et cetera, in order to make like a strong determination of if like a war crime has been committed. But I was surprised to find out that at the end of the Goldstone report, I don't think they conferred with the Israeli military at all for any of it. And
Well, this is the big problem though with like a lot of the reports is that like at the moment I'm fairly sure the special rapporteur from the UN doesn't even have a visa to get in. Like they're not. It's kind of a double-edged sword where you can be like, well, you didn't talk to the IDF or any of the Israeli officials at all, and that is true, which makes it really difficult to determine anything. But then if the IDF or any of the officials won't put forward any information, it also makes it very difficult.
yeah, but then I think at best, then all you can say is that like this is kind of what it looks like, but you can't make a strong case for necessarily for war crimes. You can only say like it kind of looks like this, or we need more information, or there needs to be a body somehow to compel them otherwise, right?
Yeah, and yeah. I think, yeah, you definitely have to couch what you say, which maybe isn't couched enough, but I think non-compliance with international investigative bodies can't be used as an excuse to kind of discount every claim that's made.
Yeah, but I think one of the also confusing things is it seems like, I think I read this for Rome Statute stuff, this is considered to be like supplementary to local jurisdiction. So I think it's a matter of ICC principle that as long as you are investigating yourself, as long as your own country is doing these investigations, that's considered adequate, I think, for ICC purposes.
Would we let like countries we don't like get away with that standard?
Well, I imagine there would be an evaluation of how comfortable we feel with these countries, quote unquote, investigating themselves. But I also imagine that for the ICC to have any bite, I think that the idea of telling every country that they probably have to submit themselves to the authority of an international criminal court would probably mean nobody would, for every single thing, nobody would just sign up to the ICC. They'd be like, well, fuck that. I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Fuck. I wish I could remember where that was, because I don't know if this is the ICC or it was the ICJ. Fuck. I should have written that statement down. Who did they? No, none of you fuckers remember this. But.
But Stephen,
What?
sorry, I'm trying to use my calm voice. We don't apply that standard. This is what we talked about the other day. We don't apply that standard in like domestic law, right? In a criminal trial, you don't have to. The person doesn't have to testify, and we don't need to get anything from them to determine whether or not we plead through the justice system they're guilty of a crime, right? Or to even to gather an idea of what their intent was.
Absolutely.
Isn't that?
It's a crucial part of charging
Evil
crime
never
as part of the
sleeps,
crime.
but
Yeah, it
it
doesn't have to come
bleeds.
from them directly. It has to come from things around
No,
them.
that's important. I didn't say that's not important. That's how we determine things like first, second, and third degree murder, right? No, that's my point. I'm saying we don't need that person to speak to get an idea of that, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. But you're saying the opposite when it comes to Israel and international law. You're saying, well, if they don't participate, I mean, we can just get an idea, but we can't really make a determination.
That was my point. You can get an idea, but you can't make a determination.
No. I'm saying you can make a determination, and we do that in
But you
courts of law, do we not?
not in places where there could be like completely exculpatory or completely dispositive stuff that you don't have access to. That would probably be part of like the ordinary court process. Like for instance, that house you brought up that keeps getting brought up. I think that was it Goldstone? There were the statements afterwards, for instance, that like people, a military person, either they thought they saw RPGs going into a house, or there was a misreport from a drone or whatever. If that's the case, and then that house was targeted and destroyed because of that, then none of the criticisms are necessarily applied to it. But we have no way of knowing